Hello and welcome to Preparation Avengers, a weekly podcast with up-to-date impressions on every film in the MCU leading up to Infinity War on April 27th. I'm your moderator, Thomas Rogers, and joining me this week is Danny DKP Kilpatrick.
Good evening again, boys.
Again. Paul Pebbit Burns.
That's me.
And Alex Idafy Hernandez.
Watch your language, Major Tom.
I will. Thank you. We just got finished watching Age of Ultron. Avengers 2, Age of Ultron. So we're going to be discussing that. Let's get to some facts. It was released on May 1st, 2015. It had a budget of $316 million.
Good Lord. Wow. Almost $100 million more than Guardians.
$100 million more than the first Avengers as well.
That's fucking
very
absurd.
big budget this time. It had a box office return of $1.4 billion. Avengers had a box office return of $1.5 billion. So it at least... it did not perform as well as Avengers, which makes sense because I remember when Avengers came out, people being like, I'm going to see it fucking 10 times like the Titanic days. And with this one, I think one watch was enough for a lot of people. I think
Definitely
I saw
the Avengers movies are heavy hitters.
for sure. Oh yeah, $1.4 billion for sure. This was directed by Joss Whedon, who we talked about. He's the same person who directed the last one. He did Buffy, Angel, Cabin in the Woods, Dollhouse, Firefly. He wrote...
Man, shout out to Cabin in the Woods, by the way.
I did want to add one
Firefly.
thing. So I put that he wrote Toy Story, Titan AE. He did some Roseanne
He
stuff.
wrote Toy Story?
Yeah. One of the writers on Toy Story.
But he did Roseanne?
Yeah. We talked about this last time.
My
with
man
Avengers.
Dan Goodman.
But there was something I added this time that's on his IMDb page. He's working on an untitled World War II horror project.
He is.
That sounds fucking incredible. I don't even know what it is, but that sounds rad.
I actually have some Joss Whedon news.
Please.
Joss Whedon has just withdrawn from doing the Batgirl movie.
Oh, yeah.
And his reason for it is, he says, I don't have a story for it. But I don't believe him. I think that he does have a story for it. I think that after Patty Jenkins nailed it so solidly with Wonder Woman, and he had such challenges in this movie that he...
Challenges, when you say this movie, you mean
We'll get to
Batman
the
versus Superman?
No, the Black Widow
J-
stuff.
The Black Widow
okay,
stuff.
gotcha.
So when...
Which we'll cover in the I'm a Monster section.
That's not when we'll cover it, but we can cover it.
Oh,
Yeah, that is so not funny and hilarious at the same time. So I think that he withdrew from it just because it's a bad thing. It's a bad look to be telling women how to be superheroes right now in our society.
It's a shame that that's what it's looked upon as, though. You know what I mean? That
I get you. I think that he would make an excellent Batgirl movie, and I was really looking forward to it. But at the same time, I'm also interested in some different storytelling efforts.
I mean, this is all speculation, obviously.
Absolutely. Maybe he really just didn't have a story for it.
If best case scenario, he really didn't have a story, and in which that's really a humble way to say, I'm not just going to take the paycheck. I don't have a good story to tell, so I'm just not going to do it, and save everyone the heartbreak.
Yeah.
If it's the scenario that you're saying, it's real sad that his artistic vision will never come to fruition out of fear that it will be perceived as
I'll give
somehow
you that.
with a cynical take. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I'll give you that, but I still think that it would be a good choice to make.
For sure. Our cast this time, we have Robert Downey Jr. This is a long-ass list, by the way. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Kicking ass, like always.
Keep doing what he's doing.
Yep.
I actually really like Tony Stark in this movie. It's weird. I like him. I like Iron Man better in all the movies that aren't Iron Man movies, except for Iron Man 1.
you like
phenomenal.
Him playing off the other villains or other superheroes?
Yeah, like the way he plays off of characters in Avengers and Civil War.
Really
I love the way he his personality, like they perfectly capture his personality in these movies, and the way that his personality like clashes or coincides with another character's personality. Mark Ruffalo returns as Bruce Banner. Chris Evans is Steve Rogers. Scarlett Johansson is Natasha Romanoff. Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through the list at this point.
Yeah.
James Spader.
We got a lot to get to, so let's hammer the facts home.
For sure. James Spader as Ultron.
He was also in Secretary. And,
who is James Spader, by the way?
James Spader.
What do I know him from? What would I know him
so
from?
I want to say he was the guy in Stargate. Did you see the original Stargate?
I did not.
Yeah, he was in Stargate.
He was in Blacklist.
He was in Black. He plays James Spader type characters. All right, so where I know him from is this stupid lawyer show with him and Captain Kirk. He played a show with him and William Shatner were both lawyers.
Bosom Buddies.
Yep, that's the one. Oh, I fucking
just pulled up
recognize
a
it.
picture of him on my
He was also in Less Than Zero with Robert Downey Jr.
He was in Less Than Zero
He played
with Robert
Clint
Downey Jr.
in that, or
Yep.
Clay in that movie.
And I want to say he was
He's
also
in Pretty in Pink.
He was in The Office. He's Robert California
Bright
in The
Lights, Big
Office.
City with anyways.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
I never realized how much his voice sounds like Jeff Bridges to me.
He does have a very unique and interesting voice.
His voice is what makes Ultron a character that is better than Ronan the Accuser, although he's just a stupid robot who wants to take over the world like every other
I'll get to that in the
robot taking
synopsis.
over every other world.
We get
movie.
to it.
Moving on, Samuel L. Jackson returns briefly gets a couple of scenes as Nick Fury.
Hell yeah.
Well, I'll say a couple. Maybe it might only be one. Is it only one? Does he return at the end? Is he like on? Oh yeah, because he's on the helicarrier.
He's on the helicarrier, yeah.
Don Cheadle returns as James Rhodes. Aaron Taylor Johnson plays Pietro Maximoff. You may know him from Kick-Ass as Kick-Ass.
That's the same dude? Are you serious?
It is.
Wow.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Elizabeth Olsen plays Wanda Maximoff. You may know her for being the sister of the Olsen twins.
The one without Lyme disease.
The one without Lyme
And
disease.
then the one that doesn't try to look like they have Lyme disease.
Definitely like
bad.
the most gorgeous of those three sisters. And I think there's a lot more of them than those three. I think they have like 9 kids or something.
And we're back to John Stamos, aren't we?
It always comes back to John Stamos,
Yep.
and shout out to Billy Crystal.
Shout out to Pev's mom, too.
We'll get there.
Paul Bettany returns as Jarvis, but he has a much bigger part than he's had in the last, 50 movies he's been in. Kobe Smulders returns as Maria Hill.
Man,
I forgot how many of
Kobe
these movies
Smulders,
she's
man.
in.
Yeah, she's in like all of them, but she has just these tiny little parts.
Yeah,
So.
I remember her being in Avengers. Like, I watched How I Met Your Mother back in the day when it was on.
I've had a crush on her since she was in the movie Slam and Salmon.
Ah.
But here's the thing. She shows up, she saves the day, and then she walks off screen. That's like what she does.
Hey, man, she's humble, all right?
Mhm,
Fucking
there
let
you go.
off.
There you go. Hey, not
Leave her
critiquing.
alone, man. That's my Kobe Smulders.
Anthony Mackie returns as Sam Wilson / Falcon. Haley Atwell has a brief cameo as Peggy Carter. Idris Elba has a brief cameo as Heimdall. Linda Cardellini
Hermes.
plays Laura Barton. Linda Cardellini, she was in the Scooby-Doo movies. She was in Freaks and Geeks.
Victoria was watching that with me, and she's like, "Is that Velma?" And I was like,
Yeah,
"I have no
it is
fucking idea."
Velma.
I have the biggest crush on Linda Cardellini.
Mm-hmm.
She
I
is...
thought Allison Brie was your lady.
Oh, I have a lot of them.
Okay, fair enough. Me too. I mean, I got Pepper Potts,
Yep.
Christina Hendricks.
Stellan-
Winona Ryder for me, please.
Dude, Winona
You can
Ryder
have her.
in Stranger Things... Like, even though she's like a cigarette
You know, she's a
smoking
thief.
mom,
Right?
still hot.
She stole my heart.
She's good turnaround. Apology accepted.
DKB,
I
she's a
accept
thief
your
in
Winona
the
Ryder
show or in
apology.
real life?
In real life, she's a thief.
Yeah, no, you don't remember that identified? She got arrested
Yeah,
for
no, that's why I'm
shoplifting
mentioning it.
despite she was a millionaire.
That's why I mentioned it.
What a rad lady. Shout out to Winona Ryder, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Stellan Skarsgård returns as Dr. Eric Selvig. Claudia Kim plays Dr. Helen Cho. She's the one who has the cool...
She
like-
makes the skin.
Yeah, she has that cool biomedical technology.
She's like the Buffalo Bill of this movie. Has that cool skin suit that comes alive.
Oh my god.
What?
Which, I'm just imagining her saying to Vision, it puts the lotion on
No,
its
I
skin.
imagine her asking Ultron, she's like, "You about a size 14?" And they're like, Colby Smolden. She's like, "Was she a big, great, fat person?" Well, we can move on. Let's go.
Thomas Kretschmann plays Strucker, Baron von Strucker. You all right, DKP?
These dogs keep like trying to collect insurance from me, like tripping over my feet and shit.
And Andy Serkis plays Ulysses Claw.
So I actually want to call out Andy Serkis in this movie because after seeing
Black Panther,
which just changed all the Marvel Universe movies for me, I really appreciated his portrayal of Claw in this movie. I thought it was, considering the fact that Andy Serkis could just ride his I'm a CGI laurels he genuinely did a really good job of acting in this part, even if it was just as a maniacal villain.
What I noticed watching this time is how consistent his character is in this and in Black Panther, where he's talking, where he like knows what the Maximoff twins are capable of when they show up, and he's like, "Are you gonna warp my mind or whatever?" And he's like, cuttlefish. They're terrifying, and he's like has this big discussion on cuttlefish, and where he's like offering them candy and stuff. He's like silly, and it's like when you watch Black Panther and he has that scene where he's being silly, where he's like locked up in the chair in interrogation, you're like, yeah, no, he is kind of.
I almost think it would have been
guy.
a good touch for Wanda Maximoff to have tried to show him his greatest fear, and he's the one character that doesn't have one. No, that just is legitimate fearless, but is pretty much harmless because he's just a regular ass dude. He's a monster later, though.
He definitely is a monster later.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, so that's it for our characters. So DKP, can you do us a favor and tell us what the Avengers Age of Ultron is all about?
You fucking betcha I can. I think I can. I'm not entirely certain. All right, so this is a movie. It's coming of age story like the rest of these.
I mean, you're not wrong.
No,
you're not wrong.
It's
I
coming of
never
age
put that together.
Of Ultron, too. You know what I mean?
Wait, maybe you weren't actually going somewhere with
that. No, I am, because there's a... Okay, anyways, what this movie is about, they go and get Loki's scepter, and by they I mean the Avengers. Somehow Thor is like just back. It always assumes like he always just fucks off back to Asgard like he's got shit to do there, which he doesn't. But then like when they need him back, it's like we can't have Thor back. We don't know where he is. There's no way to communicate with him. But then he's just always just there. But Thor's back, and they're avenging stuff, taking the staff back, Loki's staff, which I'm glad finally gets its comeuppance in this movie, because that thing is, I'm tired of hearing about this goddamn staff and seeing it. But anyway, so they get the staff, and then somehow Robert Downey Jr. is like, there's a mind of its own within this staff for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm going to do this Ultron thing that we don't really exactly explain what it is, but it's going to protect the planet. Artificial intelligence will protect the planet. But then, turns out the artificial intelligence is like an angsty-ass teenager who's like, fuck you, Dad, I hate you! And then it comes out, kills Jarvis. That sucks. Then, I don't know, there was like some Prima Noctis shit that I thought was pretty rad. Where does this movie even go? There's the twins, the Maximoff twins, who one can go really fast, and the other one can.
The other one is weird.
Is what weird.
Maria Hill says.
Her powers aren't exactly really defined as far as what the range of them are, but telekinesis and making people scared.
Maria Hill describes exactly what her powers are. I don't have it written out here, but
let's get back to that in the review section.
Well, I mean, okay. Don't you look at me with them doubting eyes, Peb. This is my synopsis. This ain't yours.
Snops away.
So Ultron, for whatever reason's like, instead of just fucking off to some other planet, I really need to destroy this one. And he's like, and the best way to do that, fuck like engineering a plague or some shit like that. I'm going to try to just drop a big landmass, and that's gonna mimic a meteor, which it won't. But I don't know, and it needs to be Wakanda. No, Wachovia. Sokovia?
Sokovia.
Similar to Wakanda, a completely made-up place.
Yes, of course.
But this one's a Middle East European made-up place.
Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, man. The Avengers fight. Cliff Barton's got kids. That's pretty cool. Then, Vision. So they break the staff, and they find out there's an Infinity Stone in them shits. Right? Which is, I forget which one. It's the yellow one.
It's the
when you were talking about it having
stone.
A mind of its own. It's called the Mind Stone.
Oh, yes. You know, I actually didn't put that together. That's why I'm actually excited to do this. Because this synopsis is actually me trying my hardest to describe this movie. There's a lot of unanswered questions that I have.
This is why we have you do it.
Let's see. What else? I don't know. Just, it doesn't really fucking work. They kill Ultron and boom. Movie's done.
Save the day.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of it's pretty standard, you know. But that's about it. Oh, and the Maximov's turn, not bad.
It's hard for me not to just like tear everything you say apart when you say it. You just gotta let it go, though. I've just got to let it go and just know that you're just going to go on a tangent. And any like weird things that don't get answered properly, we'll just bring up in the review.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So that's what this movie's about.
Yep. Nailed it.
accurately.
Hashtag nailed it. Okay, so let's review this movie. Peb,
Yes.
there were a lot of times where you and I both were making eye contact during his synopsis.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to touch on? Anything that you want to add
Is
to
there
it?
any corrections that you think we could add?
So, I think that you really did make a brilliant observation about this movie, that this movie is a coming-of-age movie. It truly is, and that had not occurred to me.
Dude, I thought the exact same thing. I was like,
brilliant.
oh, yeah, no, this is an Avengers coming-of-age movie.
It's actually kind of
really
funny because if you ever go back and listen, a lot of the synopsis I say this is a coming of age story.
Well, for some reason that time,
this is the first one where I kind of meant
in this case, you nailed it.
yeah.
And not just for, I think, Ultron. It's a coming of age movie for our characters as well, as they sort of come into their own and become a more regular. At the end of Avengers, they were kind of. We'll show up if we're needed, blah, blah, blah. And in this one, they're becoming a more organized team.
They're a team.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like the coming of age of the Avengers and the coming of age of their villain, who Tony Stark accidentally makes.
Oh, he makes that motherfucker on purpose.
Well,
It
he does. He
It just turns
gets
out
out
to
of
be
control.
the wrong thing.
As a product of his PTSD.
So
seed, son.
there were a lot of tiny details that I don't think it would be useful to go through and correct.
Well, then
in your synopsis.
So
let's
if
just jump
if
to
on the whole it's all correct, we can just move on to scoring this piece, right?
perfect. 10 out of 10.
There you go.
Let's just briefly take a couple of moments to go around and like say what we like about this movie, or just give our overall impressions before we start diving deeper in. Then, Pep, you want to start us off with that?
Sure.
Then,
So I didn't like this the first time I saw it, and I really enjoyed it a lot this time. And there were two reasons for that. And the first one was I saw this movie right after Guardians of the Galaxy had come out, and I walked into this movie wanting a happy, fun summer romp. And what I got was a complex, heavy, thick story about a lot of different things. And at the time, that's not what I wanted. And so my expectations sort of betrayed me. But coming into it as a way to talk about how this movie relates to all the movies we've seen up till now, and how it relates to the movies that are going to come afterwards, this movie truly ties together all of those different pieces. So I think that it overreached a little in that if you weren't really paying attention, so like you go into Guardians of the Galaxy, you don't have to know who any of those people are.
for sure,
It does not matter. You come into this movie, you kind of had to know
you had to know a lot before you go
of
into this
information. And I think that for me was the challenge I had. But coming into it this time, I had all those resources. Man, I've seen all these movies. I've talked about them. I truly enjoyed the way that this movie brought together and answered a bunch of the questions that were asked in the other movies and set up what the movies that are to come.
Kind of piggybacking off what you're talking about, like a lot of these movies, like if you're just like not into these types of comic book movies and stuff like that, I think that you can watch like Captain America and Captain America 2 and like not watch anything else, and both of those movies totally work and are great. And I think the Iron Man trilogy works the same way. I think a lot of these movies work on their own as films, and this movie does not work on its own. It is built on this idea that everything else, it's like I don't want to say culmination, because that's what we are all leading towards, is some big culmination of everything. But it's about everything that's happened before it and everything that will happen after it. It's a very like pivotal moment throughout this, this 20 film cinematic universe. And a lot of very cool things happen in it, but it is so important that you are invested in the world before you can truly like appreciate it, I would say.
But I think that it was just a little too dense. And I think that that's one of the challenges that it had, is that it just, you were never, there were so many just enjoyable pieces to it, but you didn't get to just sort of enjoy the ride. You were more, you kind of had to put in the work for it. Now, that being said, there were parts of this movie that I just loved. Like the beginning action sequence was truly satisfying.
talk about like buildup of them working as a team together.
Exactly.
This like you mentioned earlier in your synopsis for the film, like their purpose is
My fine synopsis.
It was a fine synopsis. Their purpose was to take down all of the Hydra bases together, and they also needed to find Loki's scepter. That's what this is the one that we see is the last one they do, but they do a bunch more that take place that we never see. They've done this several times. So the way that they call out is like they've been going around to these bases across the planet, like systematically taking them out. And trying to find Loki's scepter. And the beginning of this movie is the last stop on that trip. That's why they're all together. That's why Thor's there. That's why everybody's there. That's why they work so well as a cohesive unit. Why we get cool moments like Cap holding up his shield and Thor hitting it.
And him saying, oh, look, they're all lining up. Well, they're excited.
They work as a team very, very well in this movie.
Yeah, I thought that the opening scene was all right, but the celebration that took place because of it.
The revels?
Yeah.
The revels.
Everything
were
that the celebration that because of that, their victory, that's like, those are the parts of the movie that really worked for me. And like,
me too.
The quiet moments are my favorite parts of this movie.
Mine too. But see, even like the setup for the rebels, the discussion that Captain America, Thor, and Tony Stark have, in which they're discussing whether they're going to have the rebels, I thought it really spoke a lot to the relationship between those characters and the way that those relationships were growing and changing. And I agree with you 100%. I loved like the fact that they had a crazy party followed by the after party.
The scene
satisfying.
when everyone's picking up Thor's hammer and
Oh my
Captain
God, that
America
was so great.
moves it an inch and like her like very
Thor's
slightly
eyes like it's
he
so
looks
big.
he looks so fucking nervous, and then when he realizes that he's not gonna fully do it, like you can see the relief wash over him. He's like, yeah, of course, no, it's that shit works.
And they
so
cut to
well.
Black Widow, and she's like, "That's what'd she say?
Question I
That's
don't
a
need
question
answered.
I don't need answered." Yeah.
And even like him and Warhammer like getting out their rocket gloves to try and lift it. It's so satisfying.
Just to go back to the party real quick, I love how, you're getting to see all these different people. You get to see Sam Wilson. You get to see a bunch of different people. They ask about Jane. They ask about Pepper. They have like a little pissing contest. And like Thor's like, no, Jane is better. Like that's like the last thing he says.
That is
They're talking about she's
very
up for a Nobel
satisfying.
Prize for what she's done on the Convergence, which that line didn't click with me the last several times I watched this movie. This time I was like, oh, the Convergence, that movie that I completely forgot about. Now I know, have a good memory of Thor the Dark World. I know what he's talking about. How there are so many World War II veterans, which you're like, what are all these World War II veterans doing there? And you're like, oh wait, they're Captain America's friends.
Buds.
They're his friends.
Yeah,
Like the people that he fought side by side with fucking 70 years ago. So cool.
Yeah. I found that experience to be really good. And here's something else that I thought worked really well, is moving directly from that into the reveal of Ultron. I felt that James Spader's performance, the bit where he sings about the strings,
Yeah. There are no strings
that
on me.
part was so super creepy and well done and satisfying.
Haunting. His voice is so haunting, like as Ultron.
That really works. Now, because there were so many other things going on,
I almost thought it was reincarnated Jebediah Dane. Like the first time I watched this.
so but that leads me to the part that was actually sort of my challenge with this movie. And because his character was so complex and had so many things that he needed, like, I gotta go and get vibranium, and now we have to explain what vibranium is, and we didn't have time to come to really revile this enemy the way that I think that I would have liked to have. So, like, I wanted more of him sitting at the center of the church at the center of town talking about how...
That was a cool scene.
I wanted more of that, coming to understand him, and less of him just being a fucking
there's a
dick.
Easter egg there, too. The scene, the very beginning of Captain America, where they come and pull the Infinity Stone out of?
Yeah.
That's the same church.
Seriously?
I don't know.
No.
Oh.
It's not.
Dude, I saw you looking at me like, are you jumping ahead? I was like, if I'm guessing this just out of my ass, I don't know how I'm gonna play this off.
I really like that scene, and you bring up a really good point. It's like he's got 75 things he's trying to accomplish, and like at the core, like if you would have asked me a week ago before I watched this movie, what was Ultron trying to do? I would say, oh, he's just trying to like wipe out all of humanity. But that's not even what he's trying to do. I mean, that is like an end result of what's going to happen. But we talked about it last week, or the last episode when we talked about Guardians of the Galaxy, of like Ronan the Accuser is like a not that interesting of a villain. But if you have a clear understanding of who he is, what his motivations are, like how what his plan is from point A to point B, he's a lot more interesting. And I think Ultron's the same way. But like you mentioned earlier, it takes a massive amount of investment to truly understand what he's trying to accomplish, why he hates Tony Stark so much, because he fucking hates Tony Stark.
He does.
Like, way more than anybody else. And yeah, I don't know. The whole idea of evolution, like he wants humanity to evolve, so he's destroying them, but he also wants to evolve himself, and that's where the whole Mind Stone and biomedical body and all this vibranium stuff comes in. But all that stuff, like you said, he jumps all over the place, so it's kind of tough to tell what he's doing and how that is pushing towards his end goal.
And I feel like after seeing this and watching it with the critical eye for the purpose of making this podcast, I feel like I have an understanding of Ultron that makes sense to me, and I respect him as a character now, whereas before I didn't. But I don't think that that's a reasonable expectation for an audience, and I think that causes this movie to suffer. So that's sort of my challenge with Ultron as an enemy. Now, that's way better than Ronan the Accuser, who's just uninteresting. So he's interesting. We just don't find out why.
So can you explain to me, maybe I'm the typical audience who doesn't fully understand his motivation. Maybe I just didn't care enough to pay that much attention. I don't know. But it seemed to me it was like the only way to save humanity from themselves is to murder them. Sort of Reaper's excuse.
So I think that a lot of that was explained in the course of his creation. The conversation he has with Jarvis, in which he is, what's my mission? And he determines what his mission is.
What's he say? He uses a line that Tony has.
A suit of armor for the whole world, and peace in our time.
In our time. That was the one I was thinking of.
And I think that what it was for me, and maybe I'm wrong, but for me, Ultron's purpose, Ultron is attempting to accomplish protecting humanity from Tony Stark's irrational fears. Tony Stark wants to solve this problem and make people safe. And Ultron knows that mortal beings die. That's just like a part of of their experience. So at the end, when you have the conversation between the Vision and Ultron, what we see is the distinction. Ultron says, this was an impossible task.
Yeah, he calls out, he's like, they're doomed. He's like, yeah, they are doomed. But isn't like their doom, isn't something that ends beautiful in its failings or whatever?
He said humans are graceful in their failings, and something is beautiful because it doesn't last.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
And so Ultron, I think, is attempting to fix this universal human experience of our own awareness, and this is maybe just me, but our own awareness that we're mortal and that we're going to die, and that there's always
his goal is just to kill everybody?
No, his goal is to create a creature that will survive, and his way of doing that is by upgrading himself and evolving himself to become that creature. That's my read. Was that your read?
What you said, like whenever you asked the question, I think that there's a lot of similarities to that with Mass Effect. So for anybody who hasn't played Mass Effect, there's this, it's when the series, we're about to go on a Mass Effect tangent, so apologies. It's where the series got really good for me, is when you find out there are these creatures who come, and every 10,000 years, they wipe out the intelligent life on the planets in, in the galaxy, in our solar system. Yeah. He wipes out the intelligent life, and he keeps all the, the fish and all them, he keeps all them alive, and I say he, but it's like a group of, it's like a robotic.
It's a lot like Ultron.
Yes, it's a lot like Ultron. And then once it evolves again to the point to where they can destroy themselves, then they come back out of hiding, they kill all the intelligent life. So basically he is saving life by stopping intelligent life. And it's similar to something like that, except how he is saving life is he sees himself as like what's going to be the person who starts this evolution of humanity, because he has all of this knowledge of humanity, because he was connected to the internet.
He's going to
get
wipe
all this
out
data.
humanity, though.
He's going to wipe out humanity.
But that's I don't know. It's
Ultron
very
is Facebook.
Basically,
it's very excusable. But I kept thinking, like, if you don't like it here so much, why don't you just fuck off and go somewhere else?
Because that's not his mission.
Like what Dr.
And his
Manhattan
mission wasn't
did,
to like it.
His
He didn't
mission
like it
was
here.
peace in our time.
Yeah,
And he wanted to accomplish his mission.
so he
I
had
have
a
to
prime
admit, like-
directive that he couldn't like.
Very much so.
But like that he couldn't break.
Oh, I don't know. I think when you have a prime directive, it's just sort of a part of who you are, and that's
No,
sort of
I
a
mean,
part
like,
of who
as
he
Jarvis,
is.
like Jarvis, is told to do something, he does it. Ultron doesn't have those same constraints.
He does it because he wasn't finished. He never
So
actually got
like
finished.
the main goal of like protect humanity or peace in our time, like he didn't have to do that. He could just
But no,
leave if he
that's
didn't
like what his existence is based off of. That's
I
like
said, it's
once
a
he
comic book
figured
villain,
out.
So like I'm not gonna be too
For
critical
sure,
on
but-
it, but I kept thinking
and
like just fuck off to another planet then, dude. Like
No, but there's an interesting science fiction movie here. There's like a bajillion science fiction movies that are video games that play off this exact same trope.
and I would argue
think that there
do
is
it a little better.
Do what?
I would argue that there are many other examples of this story that are told in a
I
slightly
completely
more
agree,
interesting
but I
way.
do think that there is something interesting about
True.
the way that he intends to do it.
if his thing was like, look, to save humanity, I need to enslave them, so they won't be killing each other, and I can like make sure that they're under such tight watch that I would understand that if he had that warped intention. But I don't know. I kind of just and that's the only thing that didn't really work for me Ultron wise. Everything else I thought was kind of okay. His character was interesting and fun, but just the whole like peace in our time means I got to murder all these guys, and I don't know. Like
So does
all that
Skynet work
just
for
seemed
you?
weird, huh?
So does Skynet work for you? Because it's a sort of a similar conclusion that Skynet reached.
I haven't really given Skynet much thought.
Okay.
Like I understand the concept of it, but I thought that was more straightforward to me, which was machines became sentient.
We didn't like
and
the
then it's
motivation
like, well,
was not
we're
a
better
huge
than
factor.
you, so we don't need you anymore.
The plot of
Which I doubt I've
like the
described it that
Terminator
way.
films,
Maybe that is what he's doing, but okay.
the whole idea of what Skynet and artificial intelligence and their plot to take over the world, that was like in the background of the Terminator movies. That's not the focal point.
Whereas
and with
in
something
this,
like
the
this,
focal point's
it was
Terminator.
the focus
yes,
point.
this is like what
And
the
time
whole
travel.
purpose of this movie is like to stop these things from happening.
Yeah.
But I thought Ultron was a decent villain. I remember his CGI being really shitty, but I did not feel that way this time while watching it.
I had the exact same experience. I was like, I did not appreciate him originally, but this time I was like, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And all of these dumbass like shortcomings that I'm bringing up like are kind of explained by the fact that he is like an angsty fucking teenager.
For sure.
He's not
He
like
is.
he's not the artificial intelligence which can be like, well, I base everything on logic. Logic dictates that humans don't need to exist. He's rage-filled, angsty, and he has dad issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So, like, all the shit that I would normally be like, well, this is fucking kind of stupid. Like, I mean, it's kind of excusable because he's kind of fucking stupid. He's not perfect.
And
He's
frankly,
imperfect.
And frankly, your example is perfect because I mean he is literally throwing a temper tantrum. I mean that's sort of his. He just sort of throws a temper tantrum, and when he doesn't get his way, he just sort of goes, oh.
Well, like a perfect example of that is
The Cho lady.
Whenever he's
goes,
having a
shit."
conversation, whenever he's having that conversation with Ulysses Claw.
Oh my
and
God, yes.
Ulysses Claw is like, that's one of Tony Stark's lines, and he's like, "Do not compare me to Tony Stark," and he just inadvertently, accidentally chops his arm off, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry about that." Like,
and quick immediately go and like he's just he's such a teenager in that moment.
Spoiler alert.
Well, they set
Spoiler
that up
alert
at the
for what?
very beginning.
It's you're
For his
revealing me.
I'm a
I'm a monster.
They set that up at the very beginning when he's like, no, he killed Vision out of rage. He's not this logical soft thinking like, does not compute. Humans do not need to exist.
yeah,
Like
it's
Stephen Hawking type character.
it's
Robot that without feelings. It was very calculated. I'm sorry. I
So-
got sidetracked there.
But
it was a gut reaction to kill Jarvis.
Absolutely 100%. But see, here's another thing that that I realized this time that kind of worked for me is that it retroactively made Avengers make more sense. So when Loki goes around and taps people on the chest with this scepter, and all of a sudden their brain gets taken over and they become a slave to whatever this concept is.
The Mind Stone.
This makes more sense when it's a Mind Stone, and that it's a rage-filled being that's coming into existence and trapped within this stone. Suddenly that escaping out and overwhelming someone, that makes sense, and so it sort of retroactively made that story more interesting.
Speaking of his first large appearance when he is like the half shitty Iron Man suits, right? And they're like, who did he kill? There was no one in the building. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? There was just a giant ass party here. What do you mean there's no one else in the building? There's like 100 people here. I had to bring that part up.
No, but by that point, everybody had already left.
Yeah, but he's like, I killed someone earlier, and they're like, there was no one here. It was just us. And I was like,
He's
sorry,
talking
what?
about Jarvis.
Yeah.
I know who he was talking about, but that was before they knew Jarvis was dead.
Yeah.
And like, who could he have killed? There was no one in the building.
I agree that wasn't, so that a lot of parts of this movie had that quality to it. It's like in Avengers, they had nailed down every line and every situation so that you didn't have to like think it through. And in this movie, I get the feeling there was just so much going on that they didn't have the time to work out all the little kinks like that. Like how that joke didn't quite land, because I love that line and it makes us think about Jarvis as a person. And that's, I think, a really important thing to do. But the movie had made a mistake, or the movie maker had made a mistake by having all those people in the building previously. Do you see kind of where I'm coming from?
No, it's kind of the basis for a lot of the review discussion we've had, which is like, if you're not watching this movie in a similar setting to how we are watching this movie, which is like, let's fucking ham through 10 Marvel movies and analyze them critically and just go crazy on them.
I think that Guardians was a good palate cleanser, though.
That's true.
For sure.
Going right back into the gritty, like, I didn't mind this time. Like, I was not miserable watching this film.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
through pretty much any part of it.
I actually,
it was long,
all of these things that we're talking about, like, every time, anytime there's a big tentpole Marvel movie that comes out, I rewatch, like, everything that's kind of leading up to it. I mean, there have been times where I didn't, but especially with an Avengers movie, I'll rewatch everything leading up to it. So, like, I'll be prepared for a lot of that stuff. But like an average moviegoer is not going to be like, I'm about to spend fucking 40 hours watching 20 movies.
I know Victoria was like,
leading up to.
She walked in when I was watching, I think it was Winter Soldier, and she's like, I'm sorry. And I was told her, she's like, and I was watching this one, and she's like, this one's not that bad. And I was like, no, I know, but like, or no, I was watching Guardians, and I was like, dude, I gotta watch Age of Ultron. It's the next one we gotta do. After having so much fun, she's like, it's not that bad. And I'm like, yeah, but like, just after watching these back to back to back to back for weeks, like, you don't get that breathing time to be like, and so yeah, Guardians like really helped out with that. I think it reinvigorated and allowed me to come back and really. Plus, like, I don't think this movie is bad.
I'm hoping, and
it's a great movie.
Possible spoilers for things to come. I'm hoping Thor Ragnarok plays that same role.
Also, you know what? Let's talk about Thor real quick.
Yeah,
he was my favorite character in this fucking movie.
That's awesome.
Like, which not to mention, just a quick shout out to the Hulk, actually being like,
the Hulk was awesome
because the Hulk is my favorite comic book hero.
We should come back and talk about the Hulk, because in this movie, he's important.
But I'm not talking Bruce Banner. I'm talking about the Hulk.
No, I hear you.
But no, you get some early, like, you get to see kind of a little bit early Thor's transition from being more stoic to, I mean, still stoic, but like more comedic. That you see, like, so many lines, like when he's like, "It's because I am mighty."
Yes,
it's such a corny ass line.
And then he like
when
walks
it's like
into the
mighty Thor. That's
Or,
how you would see like it on the comic books back in the day. Like, mighty's not a term that's fucking used anymore. So it was things like that that worked supremely well.
My favorite of those was when he flips. Everybody tried to lift the hammer, and he walks up and he flips it, and he goes, "I have a simpler explanation for you. You cannot lift it. None of you are worthy." And that
He says it's such a
the conversation that he has with him in Vision, wherever they're talking about like the way to swing, where he's talking about how well balanced Mjolnir is.
He's like, well, you wouldn't have any particular force if it's wasn't weighted. I forget the thing, but yes, it was his character was so fucking funny in this movie.
Agreed.
Comparatively, and I don't remember that at all from seeing it the first time. I thought that's why I thought it was such a stark comparison to Thor Ragnarok, where like he's all quippy and really fucking humorous and funny.
You brought that up,
but it really did start here, though.
Well, you brought that up whenever we were talking about Thor, how like cocky he is in the first half of the original Thor movie, and how like his character has to learn something and grow up and all that kind of shit.
And we see him continuing that effort.
Yeah. I'll say this: the rewatch of all of these movies has given me a stronger appreciation for Thor.
Me too,
dude. Big time.
And the actor,
Chris Hemsworth.
Chris Hemsworth does a really good job with it.
Oh yeah.
Real quick, I haven't heard from you in a while. Is there anything that you want to touch on that we've touched on so far? Anything you want to add to?
Movie's for me, this is a very conflicting movie on how I'm actually in the end going to review this, because to me, as a linchpin for the other Marvel movies, I love it. I love seeing the dynamic of the characters and how they're finally cohesively working as a team. Each one of them they're just mingling with one another. The introduction of bringing in the rest of their extended family, Falcon, War Machine. But then as a movie, and what Ultron ultimately is, the idea of him, which you guys explained perfectly, falls extremely flat for me. And it's very difficult to gauge where I would even possibly put this movie.
Cool.
Well, like I said, with Ultron, like all of his shortcomings, I think make sense.
It's very strange because
that's why I'm not ripping the shit out of it.
Thinking about all the things that we've talked about thus far, it sounds like we have a lot of issues with this movie, especially compared to like Guardians. When in reality, I think the majority of us like really, really, really like this movie. We're just saying that we just watched it in the perfect conditions.
Another thing that I think is like one of the failures, and you guys mentioned it again, but it's the fact that you kind of need those other movies for this one to work. And that is such a big shortcoming of this film. Like, if this were your first movie, it would be great to say, I get what's going on. I get these kind of characters from their similar interactions. Kind of like Guardians. When you saw them, you saw who they were. You immediately knew who they were. And this one, like Pev said earlier, you need to have seen the other connective tissue for this thing.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's not necessarily top tier filmmaking, but luckily for us, we have been watching it all in order, so...
I want to talk about all the different Avengers and kind of what they go through throughout this movie, so this might be a long episode. But to do that, I want to talk about the Maximoff twins first.
Okay.
So, Quicksilver...
shout out to Kevin Sorbo. Disappointed!
Quicksilver to me is like, his story is not that interesting, especially like when this movie came out, there were so many comparisons to him in the X-Men movies, where all of his scenes were fun, where he put on the shades,
where
and
his
went
scenes
slow-mo,
were the
and
fucking highlight of the movies.
Yeah.
And it looks like they thought about doing it once, giving us a similar scene,
like the train scene where he's taking everybody off the train. Like, he's cool. I like his power. I've always thought speed was a cool, like, I don't know, superpower to use in a movie.
I spent a good portion of the movie thinking about how that would work and how it doesn't make sense. But
I spent a good portion of this movie thinking about him specifically and what role. So first off, he gets Joss Whedon. We just got to straight out do that. So Joss Whedon has a habit of killing off the last character you'd expect for him to kill off. And he does it sort of consistently. See Firefly, I can give you a million spoilers for Angel through Buffy in which he does this. And it's frustrating, and it's sort of a crutch to add meaning to the story. But here's the problem. It didn't work very well in this story because I didn't feel strongly about him. I did not come to the point where I was like, oh my God, he's the best ever, and I love him. Or even,
the one interaction you can point back to and be like, that was memorable, is the didn't see that coming bit.
Yeah.
And that's like the one thing. That's it.
I actually really like all that stuff. I think the problem is, and what you're talking about, Peb, is 100% accurate, is that he exists as a character for other characters. His character obviously matters a lot to Wanda, and we see, like, you know, the impact of his loss, what that does to her.
Absolutely.
We see the impact that he has on Hawkeye, to the point to where, like, at the, you know, where Natasha goes, where the farm scene,
Yep.
which is another one of those quiet scenes that I really enjoyed, where Natasha goes to the baby bump, and she's like, "Hey, Natasha," and she's like, "It's actually Nathaniel." And then at the end of the movie, we see the name is Nathaniel Pietro Barton, where it's like, oh, he named him after him. So he like has, he has an impact on these characters. But that's all he is. He is the reason for other characters to be interesting. He, on his own, is not super interesting.
And it's like, he's like the evil anti-Coulson, right? Coulson, I didn't see coming. And I loved him passionately.
I get it. You didn't see him coming? Didn't see that coming?
Yeah,
fucking good one. Did you do that on purpose?
A little bit. So, but in this case, I saw it coming, and I didn't care about him. So, like, in even his line, I didn't see that coming. You didn't see that coming. No, like I saw it coming, and so like the line even called the fact.
That's a callback to the Mandarin about how you'll never see him coming.
So
we should have a new segment.
You'll never
about seeing things coming and that being in these movies.
So that's actually what we should have named the prediction portion.
Oh yeah, you'll never see me coming. So he didn't work for me very well as a character, and it's frustrating to me because the character in the comic books and the character in other stories is so important to me and so valuable to me and interesting.
Well, I think the Maximoff twins in general got very little screen time outside of them doing uninteresting things like fighting.
I was going to go in the opposite direction with Wanda, where I feel like she is such an integral and important part of this movie. She is she's
the instigator of a lot of the action.
She is the person who is like...
She's the linchpin that, like, sets them against each other and, like, makes them unsure of themselves.
Yeah, she sets so many events in motion. But she's the one who sets Ultron in motion because she gives Tony Stark that vision at the very beginning of the movie where he sees all that terrible stuff. And it, like, sparks his, like, a couple days ago I was having a conversation with Bruce about this Ultron idea I have. Well, now with this technology, this vision that I just had, we absolutely have to do this. So she helps she sparks Ultron's existence. And she even says, like, I could have done something worse to him, but I saw his fear. I saw his fear for like what's to come. So I'm just letting him get eaten the fuck up. I thought that shit was really cool. The visions that all of them as individual characters, while some, like we were talking about Thor earlier, not 100% sure what the fuck happened in Thor.
Yeah, I don't even know exactly what they're
just being
trying
like,
to get
hey,
at.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, I remember it was Ragnarok. Yeah.
He's like, you're gonna bring hell on Earth or whatever.
And then he goes and he jumps in a hot tub and
he jumps in a hot tub. And there's a deleted scene where the hot tub gives him the visions of where the Infinity Stones are.
No, I got a scene with Infinity Stones, but they not where they were. They just sort of like
this scene, like he has visions that show like
makes him aware of their presence.
But that's a deleted scene, so it obviously is just like, this isn't important.
I mean, it showed all the stones.
I thought it was cool how
it did show all the stones.
How she
went to that wasn't a deleted scene.
How she went to Cap and she did it to Cap, but Cap's vision was basically like. His fear was basically his loss. What he lost was the ability to enjoy, to revel in.
His fear was his life.
That's
his.
I saw it as everyone that he knows is dead, and he has a fear of not having a war to fight because then he won't have anything.
He won't be relevant
So,
anymore.
like, kind of internally. By the way, they stole this from Metal Gear Solid. I'm kidding.
Okay.
This supersedes that, but they have the same themes where it's like, well, if all you know how to do is be a soldier, then like, what do you do afterwards? And that's all he's got. That's why
he even makes that line.
Yeah, at the very end,
talk about like what they're gonna do next.
Okay, but see, this to me is like a missed opportunity because that's a perfect thing to set up the coming Civil War, the coming things that's going to happen with Captain America.
Speaking of, this is the movie that made me be like, nah, Tony Stark was right. They really do just fuck shit up too bad. When he pulls Hulk down through that like 11,000, I was like, that's like that country's 9/11. Like,
I don't know where you
really
guys
fucking bad.
stand with Civil War, DKP. I know you're not a fan of it, but like I think you guys are going to enjoy Civil War a lot more.
It's possible.
It's possible.
How is that country's 9/11?
Because basically an entire building that was super fucking tall came down in the middle of their city.
It depends on if he.
But they were building it. There wasn't actual people in there.
No, some people are going to die.
There are a
Some
lot of
people
A lot
did
of people
die.
are going to
Just
die
from
from that. If
Antonio
they either didn't die or they will die,
Like the
similar
smoke
to how
inhalation?
people
Like from all those
similar to
people?
how people that were like breathing in.
But they did. It was kind of funny when he said, "How quickly can we buy this building?"
Yeah,
that
that
was
was
kind of
cool.
hilarious.
I had to rewind that 4 times, and I still couldn't understand what he was saying in that part.
No, he says, "How quickly can we buy this building?" And then he
Okay.
throws Hulk into it.
Yeah,
And
So
I couldn't have subtitles.
He's telling Jarvis to buy the
sure.
thing so that he's not destroying someone else's property.
so yeah,
Wait, why couldn't you have subtitles on?
they weren't included in the copy that I had on the media server.
The
that I was
the
watching
completely
off of.
legitimate copy.
By the way, I looked. There's a part where Dr. Cho is speaking.
Dr. Chode.
No, Cho is
Rad.
speaking South Korean, and the actual subtitles just say South Korean. They don't give you what she says.
Oh, that's a
That
shame.
was to satiate the Chinese market. They're like,
We talked about that a couple
we
of.
need to slight South Korea.
We talked about
She's
that a
not
couple
important.
of Preparation Avengers ago when we were talking about the subtitles
Yep.
of like having the different languages and stuff like that. But yeah, for some reason it didn't show.
That shit's very
Sorry, that's kind of
important.
a weird tangent.
I remember the first time we watched Planet of the Apes, you showed me that movie,
Yep.
the new one.
and like first
We
10
watched the
minutes
first
of it,
10 minutes with no subtitles, and until you were like, I've seen this. I'm pretty sure
we know exactly what
subtitles
Maurice
are supposed
is
to
saying
happen
right
by
now.
now.
That fool's Maurice, and you should know that fool is Maurice.
And I was like, okay, good. I didn't want to say anything, but I had no fucking idea what was going on.
Well, I like it. In you guys' version, it was all pantomime.
We did go back and rewatch it, and
Yeah.
what I thought was happening was so fucking far off from what was happening.
That's awesome.
So yeah, anyway, back to like Wanda and what she does to people. She gives Scarlett Johansson's character the vision that helps give her this feeling about who she is and why she's not a great person or whatever. Like, it shows a lot of her training, her Black
In
Widow
the Red
training.
Room.
Yeah. And we see so much more of that in Agent Carter. I really want to go back and watch Agent Carter.
That's a shame. Like, I don't want to watch that, but I'm really interested in that.
You should watch
like,
it because you like
backstory
Agent
kind of-
Carter
So-
and you like Captain America: The First Avenger. It's like
So that brings me to 2 points.
It's like the creation
You know how
of S.H.I.E.L.D..
like
It's interesting.
sci-fi original films, you can tell they're sci-fi original films. That's how I feel with like CW stuff.
no, this isn't a CW thing.
Or what?
But no, I get what you're saying.
So this brings me to 2 points, which is there were major plot points in this movie that came from series that if you didn't watch those other series, you totally didn't get it. One of them was the helicarrier at the end. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. literally spent an entire season hinting at
That they've got another helicarrier.
They
that
got
they're
another
building.
My God,
helicarrier.
they're Shield helicarriers.
But I don't think that's a huge. I don't think that's one of those things that's like, how did they get that helicarrier? That wasn't like a
Captivating
point.
television.
Yeah, I don't think that was a point while watching the movie. I was like, how did they get that helicarrier? It was more as someone who watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when that was happening. I was like, oh, I know where that helicarrier came from. It was something like that. And it was similar to the whole thing with Black Widow, where it's like, that's really cool getting to see this if you want to see more. I don't think that they didn't work because of how
I
they
just think that
existed
it
in the
added
movie,
to a level of complexity that didn't serve the movie very well. Like, I think that story, I think it's one of the reasons that Black Widow's story failed so painfully.
See, I don't think it fails. Like, I haven't seen that stuff, and it made me just more intrigued because I had questions that I don't have answered. Like, what the fuck? What is the Red Room? That sounds interesting. I don't know what that is. Like,
Honestly, if you want the real answer, read the comic because the show doesn't even do it that well.
I'm sure, like, that there's a much better expanded universe thing out there that explains it. But, like, I didn't know that going in, and that, like, it helped me be more intrigued by, like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
what
it gives
exactly
that
was she doing? What's
character
going
more
on there,
layers.
you
I
know?
guess for me, so if we're moving on to the reason that the Maximoff twins makes for a really good segue into all the other characters is that she had a profound effect on all the other characters. So if we're moving on to the Black Widow character,
I do
that's
just
fine.
want to say really quickly, last thing on the Maximoff twins, I find it a very, very odd choice for them to include them at all in this series, considering
They're Magneto's
I
children.
guess
I
we
know,
should, I
that
guess we
just
should just
bugs
cover
the
it for anyone who
crap
doesn't
out of
know.
me.
If you're listening to this, I'm sure you probably do.
It's in the Secrets of
But-
the Marvel Universe, but it's fine to cover.
Yeah, they're completely different characters in the X-Men universe. They're Magneto's children. They have, well, Scarlet Witch was nerfed significantly for this film, which, I mean, it makes sense. But yeah, like,
sure.
if you can't have them have that interesting backstory and have the exact same powers, like, I don't see the point of their...
I think they do have an interesting backstory.
And
I haven't...
no, I don't think you have an
I
interesting
you
backstory. Your backstory is a lot more interesting than people would think it is, to be honest. But
well,
I think
let's keep it a mystery.
Yes, definitely. I think that their backstory is actually really interesting because
the original one or the one that's in
the
this
one that's
film?
in the film.
I saw that as like
a Nazi experiment.
But why are they a Nazi experiment? Why? So Captain America. So
it seemed like it was just
I'll lay it out
film,
real quick.
though, you know?
So it's always kind of been a thing, which is one of the reasons that Civil War works for me. That Tony Stark, you know, he's a weapons manufacturer, or his family has been for a long time, and that they are like, I can't think of the word, but they're the whatevers of war.
Lords of War.
Dogs of War.
Sure, both of those things work.
Do you say Dogs of War?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, up top. We cover
So
both bases.
they,
I was deciding which one to say.
The Stark family has been creating problems.
War profiteers.
War profiteers. Yes, they've been profiting off of war
warmongers
for a very, very, very long time.
How many more can we get?
If you think about like a lot of the challenges that Tony Stark has had throughout all of these movies, why one of the reasons Iron Man 2 is so much better than Iron Man 3 is because his past,
insane.
Because the past of the events of like what Howard Stark and Tony Stark and all of them do, they like come back up a lot, and they cause Tony and the Avengers a lot of problems. And I think this idea that there was a missile that destroyed a building that this family was in, and they want vengeance for that. And so Captain America has the line where he's like, yeah, a couple of normal people getting some super serum injections
that actually
to
was
fight
an
war.
awesome line.
Yeah.
Being experimented on by a German scientist in order to defend your country. It was brilliant. It was exactly his own story, and I'll give you that. My problem is entirely based on the fact that I read the comics and that they were so beloved to me as characters, and that these changes to the characters bothered me. If I had never run into these characters before, I would have had no problem.
Yeah, and the fact that their names were still Maximoff too.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And this is purely just from, which isn't really relevant here since this is the cinematic universe.
Agreed.
But yeah, I just had to point that I just found like their inclusion out of all like the different people that you could have had just to fill their spots in those roles for like new adversaries. I found their inclusion to be very odd considering the hurdles associated with
Baron von Strucker in the comic books had 2 children of his own, and they were twins, and he experimented on them. They just became other different types of heroes. So it's kind of combining a bunch of different comic stories into one.
I guess I would have been more interested in Baron von Strucker's kids. And in fact, if he had experimented on his own kids, that would have been freaky.
And it also like would make more sense since they changed Wanda Maximoff's powers, period. Because it just quickly in the comics, like she can basically manipulate reality. Or if she's like, I just want Vision to not be here, he just wouldn't be here. Like
wait, but in the comics,
it takes her a while to get
way
there.
later in that.
But I don't see
it's
Elizabeth Olsen getting to that point. She doesn't manipulate reality.
I think it's one of those things to where like Goku has the ability to pick up a fish in the first episode of Dragon Ball, and by the end of Dragon Ball Super, he has the ability.
But the point is, like, she can't
universes.
control those powers anyways. None of this is relevant to the MCU, so I don't want to.
For sure,
I want to go ahead and rail this in, but
I do think that there's a word that I'm trying to come up with. The discordant, that this creates a discordancy. This creates a question where they didn't need to, and that's why.
Yeah, that's why I was saying I find it questionable, especially since their powers are different. By the way, one thing I want to say,
I don't think her powers are different.
To me, it looks like they're.
So what is her power? What is her power in the movie?
Well, I mean, basically being able to manipulate people's minds and then telekinesis. Which, like, that's the basis.
She doesn't do that in this movie?
She's basically, in this movie, she has the same powers as the Phoenix. In this movie, she has the same powers as Jean Grey. Whereas in the comic book, she has a very different... It doesn't work like that at all.
But it's a similar thing where it's like... where she can just be like, I'm going to stop this train, or I'm going to rip this thing apart. Using my
In the comic
mind.
book, she would say, I want that train to stop, and then something very inconvenient would happen to the train, like a wheel would fall off.
Hence the
or
witch.
So she's like a monkey's paw.
she's a monkey's paw, exactly. And in this, she was more like Jean Grey. She was more like, I can read your mind, and I can move objects with my mind, and then when I get more angry, I can move more objects.
Now, as someone who didn't read the comics and didn't really care that they like took, that they changed the story and that she's not a mutant and all that, I don't know if what you guys are talking about, and I could just be defending something that isn't worth defending.
I don't know if I'm going to accept your Wanda Maximoff apology.
But I think that what she has the ability to do plays better
I agree.
on screen.
I agree.
Than what the version of Wanda Maximoff.
Absolutely.
I don't think
the
the X-Men Wanda Maximoff Scarlet Witch should have been in this one.
That's my argument as well.
But that's our only point. Is like I just don't see
Just
the
call her something
push
else.
for their inclusion of the whole thing.
He could have even been a speedster. Just make him quickie
You could
guy.
have alluded to that. It was like, well, that's the parallel. That's they're nodding to it, but giving the same name and the same, like, basically saying, yeah, these are the same characters, but everything else is just different about them, different backstory.
Did you guys notice that they didn't call them Scarlet Witch or Quicksilver in the movie?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm not saying that that's not what they are, because the movie clearly advertises that that's who they are.
Last thing I didn't like about her character was, like, you have the ability to just sneak up on people like that. I got so thrilled when Hawkeye fucking shoved her that taser on her dome.
I love the Hawkeye. So this actually takes us to.
Do we want to go to Scarlet Witch or Hawkeye first?
Well, we were going from one to the other, and so this movie was really like somebody watched the Avengers and made fun of Joss Whedon for putting Hawkeye in it, and he said, "Fuck you, man! I'm going to make an entire movie about how badass Hawkeye is."
It was
Dude,
like
great.
It was like a spite fuck you to everyone that he was this interesting in this movie.
He has been the complete opposite of interesting in every single movie.
I know. Hawkeye
we
was
have
great
been
in this.
massive haters of Hawkeye. Well, I've been probably the biggest hater of him. I thought he was
and not
worthless
only
in
that-
Avengers. I thought he was worthless in Thor.
But he was self-aware. Like
Yeah.
that whole scene where he was going, the city's is flying, and I've got a bunch of arrows.
Yeah.
Nothing makes any sense.
None of this makes sense.
I just thought that was nice. So while Hawkeye is not my favorite character, he is one of my favorite characters in this movie.
Yeah, I agree big time on that.
He
He had a lot of funny ass lines. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of scenes that worked, especially him tasering Scarlet Witch. Like, it was like, you can just sneak up on all these characters and no one sees you, just creeping in the shadows, about like you're about to massage the back of their neck, but not Hawkeye though. And then it even referenced, like, when I saw Loki's scepter and her, I remember thinking this the first time when she was like controlling fucking people's minds. I was like, they're not gonna do this goofy mind control shit again, are they? Nope. And he's like, I've done that mind control shit. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I thought that was excellent.
Her power makes a lot of sense, also based on the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
Well, like what it gave her.
If she got power from the Mind Stone, then her activities make sense. Absolutely.
So one of the things I really like about Clint is we've all had this feeling of like, he is worthless. Yep. He is a nobody. And he specifically plays that part in this. He even has a discussion with his wife about like, why are you doing this? These are like gods that you're out here fighting with. And he's like, I don't know. I think she's the one who says the line where she's like, they need you. Like, you're important to them.
They don't need your bows and arrows. They need you to be the glue that holds them together. Yeah. Like Agent Coulson was. They're like, this guy fucking, he got shot. Clint did, so it's like, no, they care, you know. I don't know.
And then we get to see that come to fruition with the scene you guys were just referencing, where he's, bunkered down with Wanda. He's like, "When you come out of that building,
he's more of a psychologist rather than a, a good soldier.
He humanizes the team.
He humanizes the team. He's a field psychologist. He's like,
there you go.
Yep.
So yeah, like completely made up for all of his shortcomings in the previous ones.
Completely.
And I liked his wife.
Yeah.
And he had a lovely family.
Yeah, their kids were nice.
Yeah.
Thor was stepping on Legos and shit.
And then he like kicks it under the table. I love that.
I gotta say, I really
that scene in general was great.
It
like,
was.
Them being
Like,
at
Quiet
his
moments of
little
this
farm.
movie are the best moments.
when Iron Man is like, "Oh, she's definitely an agent, and those are smaller agents."
The scene that I liked is when they're chopping wood and he
I
walks
know!
away.
He's like,
and,
"Don't
and
touch my pile."
Captain America's this way big. He's like, "Hey, don't steal from my pile."
Also, did you notice Captain America gets pissed off and he just rips one apart with his bare hands?
Which I think is one of the cool things. The characters are super consistent throughout all of these
Yeah,
movies.
it was interesting that they're like, "Oh yeah, Tony's an engineer. Can you fix the tractor?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course, no problem."
Yeah.
Like-
But like the whole thing with like what I talked about earlier with Tony's backstory about his family and war profiteering and all this shit, like that is something that comes about throughout this entire series. And Captain America being like a goody two shoes, but kind of a badass, that plays throughout the entire thing. And the conflict that those two characters have has existed since the first Avengers.
Absolutely.
And we see more of that in this one. He even makes a line about like where he's like, "What, you don't have a dark side?" He's like, "You just haven't seen my dark side." Where there's this like whole there's a tension between the two of those characters that you're like, something is building. So even if, you know,
That's funny though, because by the end of it, I felt like it was endearing. Like they're shit talking. In the first one, it wasn't. Like they were at each other's throats. In this one, I felt like it was more endearing of each other. And even at the end, it was like, "I'm legitimately gonna miss you. Get the fuck out of here."
I got the complete opposite, especially when he's trying to actually get Jarvis into Vision's body.
Oh no, there was
and
that
Cap
bit.
just throws the
Yes.
machine and fucking stops it.
When he threw that, I was genuinely surprised when he threw that shield and just smashed up all of Iron Man's shit.
Oh,
yeah.
I want to
Yep.
point out one thing. Pebiv, we
Yeah.
talked about this, I think, I don't remember when. We were talking about the mechanics behind Captain America getting that shield back to him.
Vibranium. Oh yeah.
Did you fucking see that?
The magnet?
in the magnet
he just
in the thing.
shoots and it
All
magnets
right.
back to him. And I was like, that's my headcanon. And now it doesn't have to be just headcanon. It's true.
But his outfit is changed from this episode to the previous ones. So he could have just gotten that. And he does super crazy shit with his shield. Like in the beginning, he throws his shield while he's flying on a motorcycle and it hits like 5 different guys in a tank. And then he lands his motorcycle and jumps it again and grabs the shield in the air.
I love when
they're like, "Can
throws the
somebody take care of that
motorcycle at the other
bunker?"
car.
And then you just see Hulk like fly through the air and just run straight through it. Man, that
Yeah, I
opening
mean,
scene is
even
so-
when he
so
first
badass.
interacts with Ultron and he throws a shield while they're all in civilian clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Man,
when I saw...
who's the guy? Chris Evans, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
That dude is built as fuck, man. When,
Yeah,
when he's
he
in
is.
like his
Shit.
party shirt, and it's like you had to buy a shirt
Oh.
6 sizes too small.
Oh, you're gonna have
Come
to.
on,
You're
man.
gonna see. There's this helicopter scene coming at some point in time.
yeah. in Civil
That was a
War.
scene where I was like, thank God my wife's not here watching this with me. I'd feel like self-conscious.
So-
I'm slobbed out on the couch watching comic book movies.
Maw, eating Cheetos and shit.
But I did want to.
Sun chips, you piece of shit. Come
But
on.
I did want to.
I'm
call
not
out,
that much of a degenerate.
But I did want to call out that when his magnet brought his shield back to his arm, I did think of you right at that moment.
Dude,
I was like,
it was
"Yeah,
like we were looking at
there's-
the same moon.
There's DKP's
I
magnet
thought exactly
glove.
of you.
You know?
That's such a sweet, touching, tender moment.
Any other characters that you guys want to touch on? I feel like we the Hulk, Bruce and
The
John.
Hulk.
Okay.
Yep.
So I felt so 2 things. One, the CGI Hulk transformation efforts have reached their epitome in this movie. I felt like when he was making his change from Hulk to Banner and from Banner to Hulk, it was brilliantly satisfying. I really enjoyed Banner in this. He was, I think, a much more well-rounded character. He was more interesting. He was more dynamic.
He didn't
was,
have any of the puns of table for 2 because I'm part the Hulk. He didn't do that one fucking time in this movie.
It wasn't coy.
And I was thrilled.
I really enjoyed that. And I felt that the Hulk himself was a slightly different character. He, after seeing Thor Ragnarok, I saw some behaviors in the Hulk where the Hulk is making different decisions from the decisions that I saw Banner making. And it was subtle, but it really set, I think, things in motion.
Oh yeah, and this sets up Thor Ragnarok too, which I don't
perfectly,
remember.
yeah.
Like I was thinking. I even asked my wife had the conversation after we watched the movie Ragnarok.
Yeah.
She's like, "How the fuck did Bruce Banner get there?" And I was like, "I don't fucking know. I don't remember."
Yeah.
Because it was like 3 years ago, you know, that happened. It was kind of a throwaway scene where it's like, "Oh yeah, and we lost Banner." But I was like, holy shit, they set up World War Hulk already.
Yep. And then what I didn't notice this time,
Thor Ragnarok. I'm sorry. Same.
To be honest, the same fucking
it's
thing.
the
Same premise.
What I didn't notice this time is like in Thor Ragnarok, he like plays that short video of Black Widow being like, "Hey, you're good to come home. Like, you can come back now. Everybody's safe. We're good."
I just and that video, just now that you bring it up.
Yeah, that video. When we see it in Thor Ragnarok, I'm like, man, her hair looks terrible. Like, did she just do this one scene? And then I saw that scene in this, and I was like, nope, that's the exact same fucking footage.
Same hair, yeah.
The exact same footage. Was being weird.
I want to say that the Hulk being the Hulk, having fun, smashing shit, is top tier Hulk, and that's what we got this time.
Yeah, the Hulkbuster armor scene, that fight scene was rad as fuck.
All I could think of was like, and I talk shit about Man of Steel's destruction to that city. They really fuck that place up horrendously. And I was like, you know what? Tony Stark is right in Civil War. I'm going to go and side with him now. This is a nuisance.
Dude, Civil War is really good for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons is they are both very, very right.
I mean, let's be honest. The Avengers are all like true sociopaths. The amount of people that they kill,
they're certainly murderers.
And then he's like, well, they certainly are.
So
involuntary
there
or
were
not.
Scenes in that gave me chills. Like when the cops are approaching the Hulk who's in that sequestered in the container. I was like, what are you got like 30 seconds here. You need to be running. What is wrong with you people? That was freaky to me. But I have to make one huge complaint. Here's why that scene didn't work for me in the movie the first time I saw it. That scene didn't work for me because of the trailers. The trailers destroyed my experience of that scene.
Oh, sure.
And I was expecting, like every minute, I was like, okay, when's the stupid Hulkbuster gonna come? We know exactly what he looks like, and here's what he's gonna do, and they're gonna make these three jokes. Is that the reason you don't watch trailers anymore? It is one of the contributing. It was Guardians of the Galaxy 2 that pushed me over the edge, but this was the point where I started saying, trailers are ruining my movie-going experience. Because
I've had it with these motherfucking trailers.
My motherfucking movie experience
on whatever it needs to be for this joke to land.
So if on the other hand they had just been referencing Veronica the whole time and then the Hulkbuster came out, that would have been an amazing reveal.
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been so cool.
This is not in the Easter eggs portion, but did you guys know that in the original cut of the movie that Hulk was gray during that scene? He was the Gray Hulk.
Seriously?
Why would he have been Gray Hulk?
Because there's different versions of Hulk throughout the comics. There's Red Hulks and stuff.
Why would he have just been Gray Hulk?
Because of what Wanda Maximoff did to him.
Oh.
Made him Gray Hulk.
Yeah. It turned him into the Gray Hulk. That's like...
I don't think that's the way it works. But...
Well, I mean...
We are not Marvel experts. We stopped saying that, and we really shouldn't have.
I was about to say, there are so many things.
We do need to keep caveating that.
If we want to go back to Guardians of the Galaxy and talk about all the ways it doesn't work compared to the comics, we can.
Well, speaking of doesn't work, you don't just like drop something really fast onto the planet and it acts as a meteor. We're talking like tens of thousands of miles per hour hurling through space. That was one thing I was like, so I don't think it works that way, but I don't know enough to dispute it 100%.
It just has to be enough to cause the mass to become particulates.
Yeah, because then like it makes an ice age and all that shit.
So theoretically, I mean, we're talking like villain physics here, right? So, you know...
It wasn't a big deal.
Take it with a grain of salt. I think you could, if you
at least made it better
to
me when it was like he's going to jettison it with like propulsion into it fast.
You saw that they turned around and
they did that.
Yes,
they were doing that.
No, that's like what made it better, because at first I was like, wait, is he saying like you could just drop the shit?
Well, they talk about it throughout that scene of like, if it drops from this far, it's going to kill a few thousand.
I know, but
if it drops from this far, we're talking
I was
billions.
like, I don't think that's the way it works. It has to be moving at a certain speed.
I think
like meteors do, like, you know, crashing. But
through the atmosphere and stuff.
I think that they took some liberties with the physics in that situation, but I don't think that it was.
But the fact that they thought about it and they were like, okay, he's going to bring it up and then push it as fast as possible down. I was like, okay, that makes it a little bit better. At least they were aware of the fact that you can't just drop something from heavy ass, you know, I'm sorry, high up.
that takes me to something. I'm sorry. Do you want to go somewhere specific? So it does take me to something that I did not notice the first time I saw this movie, which significantly improved my enjoyment of this movie and significantly improved my enjoyment of Black Panther and subsequent movies. And
Andy
that
Serkis?
was the discussion about vibranium.
Oh yeah, we had a big discussion when we were talking about Black Panther recently about how we thought it was just metal, and it actually, what word did you use to describe it? It's a lot more
Versatile.
versatile. Yes,
And in
they
this,
actually use that exact line in this.
I believe so.
They
And
say it's the most versatile
metal on the
element
planet,
or something
and
like
all
that.
humans are doing with it is making a shield out of it. And I thought that was hilarious.
That was a frisbee, is what he referred
frisbee
to it as?
out of
Making a
it. That was
frisbee out of it, yeah.
hilarious. But it really made Wakanda making the most out of that technology much more satisfying to me.
See, I didn't remember them talking about Wakanda at all. And it got mentioned pretty fucking heavily.
I know,
in
like
this one, which was
Ruffalo Banners talks about Wakanda.
yeah, he's like, I thought your dad got the last of it. Plus, like the thing about Serkis's character being a thief.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I had no recollection that it was touched on that much in this one.
But it really did set things up in a nice way.
I want to talk about the Hulk a little bit more real quick. The scene with Iron Man speed bagging on his face, being like, "Go to sleep, go to sleep,
go to sleep." Yep.
Highlight of the movie, one of the highlights of the movie for me. I thought that was hilarious. And I don't say that too often. Where
No,
it's like,
you
I thought
don't.
this was hilarious. I enjoyed that so much.
I liked when he knocked his tooth out and he looked up at him and
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I said the Hulk scenes in this one finally like worked. Well, they worked in the first Avenger when he was just tearing shit up, but like they worked more so in this one for me. One thing I didn't like was it's supposed that the Hulk got knocked out. That shit can't happen. All right, man. But I'll forgive it. Let's just assume there's a deleted scene. And lastly, I want to talk about the lullaby and how much I despise it.
Do you hate the idea of it or the lullaby itself?
It's just when I hear it happening, I cringe.
So is it the idea or the lullaby
It's the
itself?
lullaby itself.
Okay.
Like I hate them calling him, everyone referring to him as the big guy. That annoys the shit out of me. It's such like a just say the fucking Hulk. Oh, we can't say his name like he's fucking Voldemort. It annoys me to no end. And everyone's like, because it makes everyone else do that coy, you know, the other guy sort of thing. But when she's like, hey, big guy, sun's going down. I'm like, I hate it.
I, on the other hand, found it much more satisfying, and this time because I compared it to Liv Tyler's effort to do the same thing.
I mean, that's unfair, though. Come on.
Is it?
Comparing it to Ed Norton Hulk? Yes, I think that's unfair.
I feel like
That makes it be like, well, sure, of course it's better.
I feel like Scarlett Johansson nailed it, and that I felt when she was touching him on the arm, like I've had that experience of being angry and frustrated, and having a woman touch me in that way has that effect on me. So
If it was Scarlett Johansson, sure.
well, but just like that moment made sense to me, so
Okay.
it worked for me. Now I understand
it's not the premise of her being able to calm
It's
the
specifically
beast.
like the lines.
lyrics.
It's just the way that it's all of it.
interesting.
It makes me embarrassed. Like I get chills. Like I don't know. I just have like an adverse reaction to it. It's not the premise of it.
I'm sure
it's
there's
just
somebody
the
out there that feels the
execution.
same way you do.
Oh, I'm sure there are lots. Did you
But
want to
it's
say
not me.
something, Idify?
No, I've been choking silently over here.
Choking up? You getting sad
No,
about
I know what
the
he's
Hulk?
choking on. You know what I'm saying, boys? Get it?
No, I didn't have a problem with that Thor scene. I mean, to me, I honestly hope. I mean,
We've been
Hulk
talking
scene-
about the Hulk. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I honestly hope that it was a callback to the Ed Norton Hulk. I feel that that's one thing that the Marvel movies seem to ignore, maybe for good reason, but
Well,
I think they don't really. Get
they
enough
certainly
of
do.
that Hulk movie in this continuity of the Hulk's universe.
Because remember, like
Civil War fan.
Ed
They correct
Norton
that.
couldn't even fuck in the Hulk or jerk off. Remember, like they had to stop him like mid, not coitus, but like foreplay.
Yep.
And this one, like shit's exploding, and he's like, "I'm not gonna go green. Don't worry about it. I got this." And he can just do it at will now. Like unless like he mastered that.
He's been getting
No,
better
he's,
and better.
he gets better,
over-
and that's why, like, when we get to Ragnarok, and he actually can speak as the Hulk and like carry on conversation. And has
Okay, I
thoughts and
accept your
stuff like
Hulk
that.
apology.
Sure.
So that means you're right. Like, you know.
So I have a crazy theory.
Right. Yeah.
So
yes, this is your Black Widow theory.
This is
right?
my Black Widow crazy theory. Do you guys want to hear my crazy theory?
I'd love to hear your crazy theory.
Go for it.
I think that Joss Whedon wanted to make Black Widow Captain America. I think that Black Widow coming out of that, picking up his shield, she throws his shield twice in the movie. She does several interactions. She makes a reference, I think, to Bucky. I feel like Joss Whedon was setting her
planting
up,
the seeds
for her to be Captain America. And I am 100% for it. And so I'm going to go on the record for saying that I hope, because I had thought it was going to be Falcon or Bucky being Captain America and Shuri being Iron Man. Now I'm hoping for Iron Man being Shuri and Black Widow being Captain America.
Oh, I'm totally wrong. That's an interesting theory. I hope the complete opposite. She is just so interesting as Black Widow on herself.
She doesn't need Captain America?
She is such a damaged character, and that to me is probably part of the reason I like her so much. She is this kind of person who will do what Sam Jackson tells her to do. She does have her own mission. She has her own plot in all of this, and I wouldn't want her to be this goody two-shoes soldier. I just don't want that.
I just think she would look awesome.
It doesn't mean she
outfit.
transforms into Captain America and is a goody two-shoes.
Her personality
soldier.
doesn't change.
Yeah, it just means like she has to take up the mantle of Captain America.
Yeah, she wears the outfit and carries the shield.
If I saw Scarlett Johansson in a skull cap, I would vomit.
And I don't want her to represent that symbol.
But I see kind of your point. But I agree with Adify. I don't think that's a smart direction to take.
Yeah.
To take it in.
Is that what Adify said? Is that it wasn't a smart direction?
He said he doesn't like it. So.
I'm just saying, I like seeing her carrying that shield.
I think it's cool.
I think she looks good on it.
I would rather see it be Bucky Barnes because I want to see that like logo.
I'd rather have her than Bucky Barnes. But
what? You would rather have her than Bucky? That is such a
hot motherfucking take for this man right here, huh?
Who would have expected?
I'm serving up hot takes like a mug.
Anything else you want to mention before we close this review portion out?
Man, there's like 1,000 things, but I can't. We don't got time.
To be honest, this review sounds like we did not like this movie.
No, I actually
think the majority of us like this movie quite a bit.
And I didn't.
It's like in that upper echelon.
I went in going into it thinking I was going to be fucking miserable.
Me too.
When I booted it up, I watched it this morning. Because the first thing that's kind of usually what I do every Saturday when I wake up. It's the first thing I do. Then I come over here and talk about it that night. But I saw 2 hours 35 minutes and I went and I was like, I could be done this by noon if I fucking really crank through it and take no breaks. I have to watch this movie in shifts. I have to go take a cigarette break.
I watch them all in shifts. It's all throughout like one afternoon, but I usually watch them when the kids are around.
The most appealing thing of this movie for me was just how it did connect to the universe.
Yeah.
Like, story was kind of lackluster for the most part, but I did like that we saw the helicarrier. I did like that the whole thing on Captain America was, we're not going to get rid of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nope, we're actually underground. I like the PTSD coming back in Stark. I loved all of it. And that to me is why this movie is so strong. But at the same time, it's a mess in certain aspects.
There are two things we need to talk about before we move on. One thing first. What do you think of Vision, everybody?
Oh yeah,
Love
we missed
Vision.
him.
Love Vision.
Pretty important, and we haven't really touched on that too much.
So,
Vision was done way cooler than I thought it would be. I didn't really know anything about Vision going in. But I love the idea of Vision. To me, all of his dialogue is like some of the most interesting and well-written dialogue of the movie. We touched on it earlier, but that conversation he has with Ultron at the end of the movie about the grace and humanity or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty. God damn it! I do not want to say anything as profound in this movie. It's profound for these movies. For him to have a character agreeing like, oh yeah, the humans are fucked, because. Inherently, I agree with that. And realistically,
I think we all believe that. Yeah,
but like, for the movie to not forcefully be optimistic about it, even for their protagonist, the people of like, no, they can be saved. Like, just like, no, yeah, they're fucked, dude. But like, I don't know.
You could tell.
Let them write it out. I thought that was brilliant.
You can tell they didn't waste a line with Vision.
I love his ability to pick up Thor's hammer.
Oh, that scene was so good, and the way that. The best part about that scene is they did not explain it.
They didn't make a big deal out of it.
They trusted the audience to be able to go from the revelry scene to that scene and go, well, he's worthy.
Yeah, he's worthy.
So one of the things I wanted to call out is, like Thor and honestly like Iron Man, we learned all of Vision's abilities without being told what they were.
Yeah.
And that was brilliantly done, and it was
I know what
elegant.
they are, but can you? I just want to make sure you know. Can you tell me what they are?
He has the ability to shoot a laser out of the Mind Stone, but that's really one of his minor abilities. He has the ability to, he's incredibly strong and he's phenomenally durable. But most importantly, he has the capacity to pass through any object and materialize himself at will.
So in the, I think it's the original, it's the second X-Men film, when that senator's like, there's a person in Wisconsin who can just walk through walls, walk right into a bank. Were they talking about Vision? You
No,
think?
that's a reference to Shadow Cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were talking about
Yeah,
Vision.
Kitty Pride.
I'm sorry, it was rude of me to shush you.
That's okay. You can shush me all you
I
like.
just didn't want you blowing up my spot.
No.
I thought I was really onto something personally,
Oh, yeah.
and I forgot that they're not in the same universe at all, and I'm completely full of shit.
But he
And
does,
everything I talk about on this podcast.
he does walk through things.
No, okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I thought that he could materialize and stuff,
I love.
but I didn't know the extent of his,
Like,
of his
you remember
powers
when
I was
the
watching it.
War Machine was, he gets in the way of War Machine from destroying
Did you guys
stuff?
notice
Dude,
that he's
I
not
liked-
Iron
I liked
Patriot
Don
anymore?
Cheadle.
That he's
I
War
was
Machine
so
again?
glad he was War Machine.
It's a weird thing that like they didn't touch on or anything. It's just he's back to being War Machine.
Everybody
I
hated
think we
Iron
got
Patriot.
exactly the right amount of Don Cheadle in this film to where I was like, hell,
No, we did.
I love
She
where he
was
like
great.
tells the story and he's like that kills at parties. And
Oh,
he tells
yeah.
these other
And
people,
then it's-
and then he like looks at that dude that's like he's
And
like,
another example
all
of Chris
agree.
Hemsworth being brilliant when he says, "Oh wait, is the story over?"
He's like, that's it. That's where it ends.
That was so good.
yeah.
No, Thor top tier in this movie once again.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I think the biggest issue I had with it is that it doesn't work as a standalone movie. It works. It's like a big web of movies, and this movie sits perfectly in the center, and everything before it matters and everything that comes after it matters, and it sets up a lot of great events, and it gives you more on pretty much every character. You understand pretty much every character in the MCU a little bit better because of this movie, which is great. It accomplishes so much, but it is such it is such a hard movie for non fans. Luckily, I am not one of those people, and I will not be reviewing it based on that or scoring it. Anything else anybody wants to say?
I want to say, and this is referencing another segment we're about to do, the I'm a Monster one.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about two things on I'm a Monster one. I'd like to bring up three, which is just two general controversies this movie had.
Oh yeah,
that are pretty big.
yeah. The
Why
only
not
I'm a
just wrap- why
monster
not
thing
just
we're going
wrap
to talk
them-
about is Ulysses Claw. So
Huh?
the only I'm a monster thing I'm going to mention during that segment
Yeah,
is
if
Ulysses
you
Claw.
want to, talk about the I'm a
wanna talk about the
monster,
controversy.
We
with-
saved the I'm a Monster bit for, like, well, I'm not
well,
the
we
only
were going to
monster.
do it in the.
I thought
So,
we were
are
gonna
you
save
referring
that
to
for there,
Black
but if
Widow?
we're gonna-
We're not going to save that.
Yes.
That's not
Oh.
what that segment's about.
Well, that's what we said at the beginning, but if you were just joshing with me.
No, you were the one who said that.
And
He
you
was,
went,
he was Joss Whedon in with you.
You were, I think you. Okay. Yes, you were jossing me, you asshole.
Yeah.
All right. So the controversies in this movie, and this has all to do with Joss Whedon.
It does.
There were two major ones that I could think of. One, you really remember how much shit he got for that prima nocta joke? That was a huge one. Where people, it was when I almost said Idify. When Iron Man
was attempting to pick up the
and it's
hammer.
like, if I rule Asgard, I'm reinsaying prima nocta, which, like, for anyone who doesn't know what that Noctis, like Final Fantasy. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's the bit where it's like a king. It's like, yeah, like kings have food tasters to make sure it's not poisonous. It's kind of like that, but it's like, hey, when you get married, before you have sex with your wife, I gotta make sure it's not poisonous. I gotta do it first. I thought that was a hilarious joke. It's just a degenerate ass thing for Tony Stark to say, but that made headline news.
It did.
And that was like the first nail in his coffin for this movie. The second one, which is even more unfortunate because I think it fits for the character and like her inner turmoil, thinking she's a monster, not Joss Whedon trying to say that if you can't give birth, you are of lesser stock of human.
But I would argue that it was poorly executed. That whole scene, in fact, fell flat because of that failure. If you had painted her vision, so they even got close to it where she was shooting targets and then she was shooting an innocent person in a mask, right? So, or who knows if he was innocent? A
Doesn't
stranger
matter.
in a mask.
It was a person. She was
It was
murdering
a person
a person.
she was murdering,
executing somebody.
If you had carried her character forward as feeling guilty about that, then I think that she would have been a more interesting story. But I think that he was trying to tell a story about women having difficulty with becoming pregnant, which is a big issue for a lot of people. And I think that if he had had more space, if this had been a different movie, if this hadn't been the interstitial movie between a bunch of, this had been a Black Widow movie, you might have been able to tell that story in a way that would have been given not only Black Widow credit, but talked about those issues in a serious way. Instead, what you got is a 3-line piece following a convoluted and confusing set of images that could be easily misinterpreted to be a negative statement about women. And I think that that's where
I think it's absurd if you can
taken.
garner that from this movie, from that scene. If
Yeah,
anything,
when you talk about like how women feel like they're monsters if they can't have babies, I don't think he was saying women. Just like whenever Tony Stark experiences something, wherever he has a feeling about something, that's not saying men.
I agree. And
like whenever painting the tribulations of a single character with such a broad brush as to say this represents
I agree. But
I think is a scary concept.
Let me give you an alternative or a different situation, which I think fits the same quality. Let's say that in this movie, you randomly had a guy kill a child in front of their mother.
rad. Okay.
This is going to have a profound effect on women and men who have lost a child. I think that...
So what about the beginning of Batman? Oh, wait. That's the reverse, but...
Right. I think that you're stumbling into...
You've talked about a lot of this stuff. A lot of the moments throughout this entire run of podcasts, there have been a moment that has meant something more to you as an individual because of your life.
Exactly. And I think that while this particular one didn't mean wasn't a situation I was personally attached to, I fully understand a person who had even the most slightly similar experience reacting in an extreme way based on their own experiences.
Yeah, but at the same time, to really associate the movie and say that that's what they were really trying to say is bullshit.
I'm saying it doesn't matter if that's what he was trying to say or not. It had that message for enough of the audience.
That actually look at it in those terms. The movie's not trying to convey that message. It's trying to tell you the character.
But what I'm telling you is it did convey that message to a significant enough portion of the population, and that is a failure of the movie.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll agree with you. It's a failure of the movie because they could have... I just think, like, had you had the part about her being sterile two sentences before, and she ended it with "I've killed people, I'm a monster," it would just change the meaning of that scene.
Agreed.
And Joss Whedon's intent, I feel pretty fucking certain, wasn't to say people who can't give birth or women who are sterile are monsters and serve no purpose. But what it means to me in that scene is like how Bruce Banner's like, "No, I'm a piece of shit," and it's like, well, we as the fly on the wall watching this play out know, like, you're being too hard on yourself. That's not true. She's doing the same thing. Her character might genuinely believe that.
All right, but if you...
And, like, you can't
all right, I'm
going to
say something dangerous.
Everybody.
All right, I'm going to say something dangerous. So here's the problem. The problem here is that there's a significant portion of the population in that situation that feels like they are a monster. I'm saying that he was describing...
Then he did a great job.
...a legitimate concern and then failed to do anything with it. He basically said, here's this feeling you're having, and then he didn't come back and say, here's another way you could look at that. Or
I don't think we're disagreeing on the fact that the scene is not effective.
No,
do I think it's a malicious statement by Joss Whedon?
I'm saying
like the
it's
controversy
irrelevant
implied?
if it's malicious. I'm saying it's irrelevant if it's malicious.
I don't think it is. I think intent is everything to do with it. When I kind of
get what Pep says, because it's a similar discussion we had when we were talking about Iron Man 3 of like they're like the challenges of PTSD. It doesn't handle PTSD well. I think the difference with this is that that's a theme of Iron Man 3, and the inability to procreate is not a theme of this movie.
No, it's just sort of thrown in there.
It's tied to a fear or a terrifying feeling or whatever she is dealing with. Sorry, I don't mean to say whatever as in like just to rub it off. I just can't find the right word to describe it. The feeling that she has as a character of what her life experiences have led her to. And I totally get what you're saying. Like with that being said, it doesn't have to have a solution.
No,
the characters do not, and I mean like having a solution doesn't make it better.
I'm just saying, if you stick your hand in this crazy, you got to go somewhere with it. You can't. There's certain experiences that humans have that they're going to have a visceral response to.
Right, but humans have to be mature and responsible enough to watch a movie and be able to dictate from reality and be able to endure people talking about it.
But that is an unreasonable expectation. An unreasonable
expectation of people to be, even despite the fact that some things might hit home a little bit closer to other people, that you have to be mature enough as a person to be able to handle that sort of thing.
Yes.
No, yeah, that's not an unreal expectation. Otherwise, like, you should just go crawl in a hole and fucking die. The world in general is not going to placate to you like that.
No.
I don't think it was an effective scene.
No, this isn't on the wall and die.
This is an absolutely unfair critique of the director. I'm not saying it's not fair. I'm saying the world isn't fair. People respond this way.
Yeah,
if you're a director, you need to be aware of that and make choices to mitigate the risks associated with it, and Joss Whedon did not do that.
I will agree with you there. But to me, it sounds like you're advocating for the people saying that are criticizing him for his intent.
I'm not advocating for him. I'm saying they exist. Deal with it.
But at the same time, like, movies exist and some things might affect you a little bit more. There are certain things we need to go into it here that like will affect me way more than I'm watching, I don't know, House MD, that I'm like, oh man, I fucking teared up during that. Now I feel like shit. The person beside me didn't. I'm mature enough to fucking, you know, be like, okay, that's gonna happen. There's just those things.
Not
like,
everybody is that mature.
Well, that's a fucking shame.
Yes.
I give this movie a 9.
What's a real shame? What's a real
I know
shame,
what you're gonna give it,
and we're probably getting into some like deeper shit here, but like, it becomes a question of what you talk about, which is a scary thought that someone who has an idea or someone who is a creator or wants to create something, they need to be very mindful of what their brain tells them is good or interesting, to the point to where maybe that thing shouldn't even exist because someone is going to have a negative emotional response to it. It's scary to think that we can eventually live in a world where like there are certain books that may not be able to exist. There are certain movies, there are certain video games that cannot exist because someone may have a personal response or reaction to it and say that this creator is not allowed to have these feelings.
I don't think art isn't supposed to deliver a visceral reaction, and that's kind of the problem that a lot of people have with these Marvel movies, is just they play it safe and they're less of an art form because of that.
We're getting into some deep shit.
But this is important to me because so when I was in art school, this was an important point. This was a discussion issue. People make art of really messed up stuff, and then this argument happens where somebody says, you shouldn't make art of that, and they say, this is an experience I had and I want to talk about it, and it creates this. So here's the solution that we came up with that works for me, and that solution is to be aware that people are going to have those experiences and create and create things to mitigate it. If you're you don't throw it into the middle of a summer blockbuster, of a spring blockbuster Marvel movie that everybody on the planet is going to go and see without any warning about it. I'm sorry. That's just asking to get shot. That's asking to have a bad to have your movie not be received the way you want it to. You create a situation where you are creating art about the thing that you are wanting to make, and then people can make their own choices. They can walk into it. It's the Mother problem, right? People said, I hate Mother, because they went into it expecting to see a movie about a horror film that they wanted to see. Based on previous experiences with horror films. They thought it was going to be more The Omen and less something else entirely. Exactly.
Not The Omen, Rosemary's Baby. Yeah.
Whereas if they had not marketed it that way, then I'm just saying that it's an unfair thing to expose the general audience to without any sort of.
I think there's a lot of things that what you're saying ring true, and even as something as small or simple as what we do, like what Joss Whedon does, is a bajillion times bigger and
agreed.
I would say more important than what the four of us, sitting in front of microphones are doing. But there have been times, just to get a little sausage for you, how the meat's made. There have been times where things will be said on Preparation Avengers where afterwards we go and discuss it and say, like, that may not have been the most appropriate thing to say on this podcast. Where, like, I've said that before, where, like, that may not be the most appropriate thing. Where, like, I am coming from at an angle of, like, it's destroying creators.
Shout out to Peb's mom if you're ever wondering what those things are.
There's a creator's intent thing where it's like, if Peb or DKP or Idify want to have a joke, they can say whatever the hell they want to. Just be prepared for there are potential ramifications. And I think
Terrence Howard's going to get really mad at us.
And should we, as quote unquote content creators, which we're just a bunch of idiots talking in front of microphones, but should we as content creators put that thought in our mind beforehand and try to control that, or should we apologize and acknowledge it? Should we make adjustments?
Here's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be allowed to make a story about a woman who can't conceive because of inelegant solutions like the one that Joss Whedon had.
Well, that's the problem, though.
Because that's the fix, right? That's how the angry people react, is that they just attack the thing and they try and get rid of it. And that doesn't help anybody. And so Joss Whedon created a circumstance where to empower people to get rid of this sort of content. And I think that this content is important, and I would like to see it fold in an arena where it could be given the attention it deserves.
So I think we're getting way off the rails here. We need to rein it in.
Okay.
And move on. Like we talked about this kind of last week. So final word on this. Final word I just want to say is the scene itself, I will agree, is not effective. As far as the controversy surrounding it, I think was even more damaging. Not only to his career, but for what he's trying to accomplish as a
I think Justice League
large advocate for women in comic book roles and all that. I think it's just kind of a shame that he got stick his face out of the gutter and someone shoved shit in it so bad. But I will agree, it could have been done way fucking better, and it does need to be explored in a better sense. That's my final word. What you got?
No, that's good.
Being a creator is very hard.
Yes, agreed.
Way harder now than it was.
That's the best final
20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
100%.
Edify?
I think in order to be a creator, you need to be able to say what's on your mind and not have to worry about public opinion.
All right. So what we got next, boys?
Let's score this badass motherfucking movie. We know Idify gave it a 9.
No, we know it. No.
Let's go around and ask.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Whoa. Both of you guys just attacked me where he
because I know what Idify
9
gave
2
it,
minutes
okay?
ago.
Well,
don't you ever fucking doubt me
I
again.
thought he was joking.
Pep doubted me last episode. And
Idify, what is your score for this movie?
Yeah, it's a 10.
Honestly, this is, like I said earlier, it's a very divisive movie. I like it on the aspects of it being a cohesive web.
Baby needs a new
else.
pair of shoes.
It's getting a 9.
Damn it!
Did you guys not hear him say 9?
I thought he was kidding.
I thought he was kidding.
Oh.
I just lost everything. I mortgaged my house on that bet, you piece of shit.
What was the bet?
That he was going to score to 10.
Yeah, I thought he was going to score to 10 too.
Honestly, when I originally
me.
saw the movie, I thought it was, but then after I resaw it again, like I said, like everything that I just said.
Major Tom, how do you want to score this movie?
I was originally going to go a 9.5. Now I'm going to go a 9.3.
Whoa! After this conversation?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Why? I'm curious as to why you think it would change.
Because
I know we talked a lot of negativity about this movie.
You didn't talk any of the negative. You didn't talk the negatives as much, and so you were mostly talking the positives. So it's surprising to me that
I went down a couple of notches. Yeah. It's before I like I said, you touched on it a lot. It's this idea that this movie has to stand. This movie doesn't stand alone very well, and robots as villains, I never said this throughout the podcast, robots as villains are inherently uninteresting.
I thought it was
100%.
They're inherently uninteresting.
100%.
And I didn't have that perception or feeling going into this movie, but this time while watching it, the really awesome scene where they're killing thousands of robots and they're robots are dying everywhere, War Machine's blowing up robots. I was like, oh, this is just them killing robots for fucking 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Not to take away from it, because it was all very cool. It just like lacked
Very cool.
very cool.
It had a
it
Phantom
lacked the
Menace
luster.
quality for me. Phantom Menace is sort of like, oh, look, an army of robots. All right, DKP, how did you score it?
I'm just scored an 8.3, man. I thought it was pretty fucking decent. Shockingly.
I am
Because
going
I did not expect it. What do you got?
I'm scoring it an 8.5. And I originally would have scored this like a 6 tops. I really didn't enjoy
our
it the first
predictions,
time.
I thought I was going to give it like a 6.5 or a 7.
Yeah, I was
So,
kind of
yeah.
in the same boat. And I thought this was a really good movie. It wasn't a great movie. It wasn't an A value movie. It was a B movie. And not the term B movie, but...
Not
I think this movie is amazing.
the Jerry Seinfeld B movie either.
No, definitely not. There were no...
My
no
kid
Bs.
likes that movie.
I bet he fucking
That's
does.
the one that he's like, let's watch a B movie. And I go,
That's
nope.
some shit your kid would like.
Nope.
God.
He likes Boss Baby.
I did
Boss
like-
Baby's
I did
actually
What a
like
very
fucking
good.
loser
one
he
version
is.
of,
Boss
of
Baby's
B
the
movie,
boss.
and that's the B movie in which they speed up the movie every time they say the word B by twice as much. And so by the
I've
end of the
seen that.
movie, it's going super fast. Anyways,
That's cool.
By the way, I didn't mean your kid's a loser, which he is, but I didn't mean it.
Sure you
You know, he just plays with toys all
Sure you
day.
didn't.
He doesn't contribute to the household. He eats your food.
Hey,
You can't predict
You-
one's future. Fuck you.
you can't make...
Oh, I see possibilities.
you
in his
can't be
future,
a
though.
you can't be a creator that creates content about
That's right.
children until you have children.
I
sir.
never have created a person. So
When you
yeah.
create a person, then you can talk about children. But until then, you're not allowed to speak about them.
I am currently
Try
not
and
telling
stop me.
any of the jokes I want because I learned better than to joke about this topic in this conversation.
All
What
right.
are you talking about? All I do is just come over and make fun of Tommy's kid all day. It's hilarious.
I
'Cause
think that's
he's-
pretty much all you do all the time, except insert.
I love
like,
that
take
kid.
the
I
word
love
kid
that
out and
kid
put
to,
everything
I love
in
that
there.
kid to death.
just make
but
fun
it's
of everything.
hilarious that he doesn't get him. I'm ripping on him a little bit, but it's all from like a spot of endearment.
Yeah, sure. It
Come
is.
on, I come over
Great
early so I can
explanation.
see that kid before he goes to bed. Fuck
This
off.
review was brought to you by Beats headphones.
Dude, that was the first one that I saw, and
When,
I fucking rolled my eyes big time.
you know
it was on the
after
Quinjet?
mission- Yeah.
Yeah.
Audi. They're great sponsors of ours. They pop up every once in a
Yeah,
while.
they were all
This
Yeah,
is the
shout out
first
to
time.
Audi, man.
This is the first time we've gotten Adidas to
Thanks for
sponsor
making
us.
this all possible.
So thank you, Adidas, for sponsoring this episode.
Yeah, Tommy, I want
Leave
to
it-
thank you for putting in the hard work to score them as a sponsor as well.
Absolutely.
You notice that Quicksilver takes the time to go and get his Adidas.
Oh, he gears up. He gears up. Levi's, the jeans. We see those in there. Captain America specifically. He definitely seems like a Levi fellow.
He does.
John Deere. Shout out to John
The
Deere.
tractor.
Yeah.
Didn't even think about that.
and then-
I'm glad
and
you
then-
were paying attention there, Major T.
And then Under Armour,
All right.
which is worn by
Quicksilver.
Also Quicksilver. Yep. It's time to move on to.
Samsung?
These are the only ones I grabbed. I mean, these are the only ones who actually paid for the sponsorship of this show. That's what I mean by that.
Yes, very much officially
There
so.
are-
Let's put that on record.
If there is an actual list of the number of product placements in every single Marvel movie, there are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them.
yeah, I don't envy
You get-
anyone who has to like negotiate those deals and then because there's probably an intermediary guy who's like, okay, how are we going to place this in the movie?
And then to
That must be a horrendous job.
and then to conform to the needs of that company, because that company is going to want to know exactly
Dude, you think
how
about
much
that-
they're paying
Do
for
you
it?
think
Yeah.
about
You
that
fucking
mall
betcha.
scene in The Winter Soldier?
Oh my God, yeah,
There are so many mall stores we see. So many.
it's true.
Time to move on to I'm a monster.
Monster.
Anybody
Monster.
want to talk to me?
Man, I'm
Okay,
always fucking
so-
late to that one. I always
You
forget I'm supposed to do it too.
So this segment is about paying homage to Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. In that film, Luke Skywalker loses a hand. So in every Phase 2 Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, someone loses
what
an
else
arm
happens,
or
right?
hand. So DKP, who loses an arm and or a hand?
Well, I just want to point out this is a dual meaning, much like in this, when Luke Skywalker loses a hand. It's also about him becoming sterile as well. So this is kind of a dual category. But in this one, our main man, Mr. Claw, known mostly by his role in Inspector Gadget, played by the great Andy Serkis, loses his hand. He's chopped right the fuck out by Ultron, man.
Good scene.
It's rough.
As previously discussed, a brilliant scene. It was accidental and really helped to identify or inform us more about Ultron and what was going on in his life. But it also informed us about Andy Serkis or Claw when he runs down and he says, "Shoot him!" and they says, "Who?" and he says, "All of them." And that sort of
he's already been paid, so why the fuck does he care?
He doesn't care. He just shooting, and he's getting all his vibranium stolen. Well, I guess they did pay him for it. So,
DKP, now that you saw him again, did you remember the scene that we were talking about when we were doing Black Panther?
I don't remember what you're talking about right now.
When we were talking about Black Panther, we were talking about him losing his arm, and I'm like, yeah, we get to see him lose his arm. And you're like, I don't remember that.
Do I remember that scene? Well, I watched it today.
We'll see that in a movie.
Yep. I don't remember us having that conversation.
Gotcha. Let's move on to secrets.
But I believe you that we did.
Of the Marvel Universe.
Universe.
Number 1.
Universe.
You guys are the most unenthusiastic fucking pricks I've ever worked with in my entire life.
I am more
Except
than
for
fucking
Pepev.
enthused, you piece of shit.
Pepev is a gentleman and a scholar.
I will not sit here and be berated any longer by you two gentlemen. Identified, let's go. Don't ever talk to me or my son ever again.
Number 1, the Hydra soldiers have leftover Chitauri tech, including gear that they use to make their suits. And there's that big fucking Chitauri whale hanging out in their base.
Which sets us up for Homecoming nicely.
Yes.
I'm actually looking forward to that.
Me too.
Number 2, Jane is mentioned in reference to her work with Convergence. Sam is following up on some leads regarding the disappearance of Bucky. Both of those are lines that are mentioned in reference to the last 2 movies. Yes. Well, the last 2 minus Guardians, because it's off doing its own thing right now. Number 3, we see Ultron with a red cloth draping over him in one scene where he's sitting in a chair in the middle of the church. Yeah. This is a reference to the crimson cowl he wore in his first appearance in the comics. First appearance of Ultron. He wears it looks like a red nun. Number 4.
That sounds sexy to me, man.
Touched on this already, but Clint names his son Nathaniel Pietro Barton. Number 5. In the comics, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are Magneto's kids. Because of rights issues, they make them children of experiments from the Mind Stone. Number 6, Veronica. Anybody know the Veronica reference?
I don't. A lot. I feel like...
Identify, what's up, baby?
It's from Archie comics.
It is from Archie. So, in the Archie comics, there are 2 women who are always fighting over
Betty and
Archie.
Veronica.
And Incredible Hulk has 2 women fighting over him. Betty Ross and Veronica, the Iron Man suit.
Got it.
It doesn't need to be that deep, but I appreciate the fact that it is.
Yeah.
I forgot all about Betty Ross.
Me too.
Yep. Number 7, Helen Cho is the mother, in the comic books, Helen Cho is the mother of a character named Amadeus Cho, who is a super genius.
Jebediah, what?
Yeah. Number 8, and the final one. Steve and Tony have another heated discussion on the farm, and Steve tells him he hasn't seen his dark side yet. So, Civil War, # please be excited. That's it. I'm sure there were a lot more, but I didn't feel like grabbing any.
I thought that was just a scene in the movie.
It is a scene in the movie.
But it was a secret at the time you saw the original.
Well, a lot of these aren't, like the fact that his son's name says Nathaniel Pietro Barton is not a secret.
It was to me.
Well,
I didn't see that. I thought you was.
So the things that you notice aren't secrets. The ones
don't you know how this works, Tommy? Yes.
Okay.
All secrets are from DKP.
I can't differentiate between me and other people's point of view. Okay, so it's all secrets to me until you tell me.
Time to move on to our friend Stanley. DKP.
This was, I think, my new favorite Stan Lee cameo. So the way this cameo works is this is at the party where we got Loki's staff. Let's all get fucked up, pick up Thor's hammer, that whole bit, right?
Revelries.
And as we mentioned earlier, he's got a lot of World War II buddies there. Captain America does. And apparently he was buddies with Stan Lee back in the day, because that motherfucker's there. And I forget exactly what he says, but then you see him walking out, very shit-faced.
Excelsior.
No, he has a line before that.
The basic gist of it is, Thor has this 1,000-year-old whiskey
that's not supposed to be drunk by, not meant for mortal men.
That he and Cap America are swilling.
And Stan Lee says something along the lines of like, "Give it to me," or
"Don't
something.
be a pussy, let me have some." And he's walking out and he's Excelsior. I fucking thought it was simple yet brilliant.
It was important enough to the plot to be, it was relevant enough to the plot to fit in. I love the fact that we finally got to hear him say Excelsior in a Marvel movie. That was satisfying.
And he owned that, like, I assume fake drunk slur big time.
No, he did.
Excelsior. I thought it was wonderful. So that was our friend Stanley.
All right, it's time to get our rocks off, boys. Every episode or every movie that has an Infinity Stone in it, we will be discussing said Infinity Stone and kind of walking through its locations and if it changes hands and things like that. For this one, we had an Infinity Stone, the Mind Stone. The Mind Stone is yellow. Its original containment unit was the Scepter. Its current location is Vision's head. Its current owner,
so wherever Vision is the
Vision
location.
Its previous owners were, like always, the cosmic entities. Thanos had it until 2012. Don't know who he got it from. Then Loki had it in 2012. And then S.H.I.E.L.D. had it in 2012 to 2014.
Did you ever explain where Loki got it from? The Chitauri guy gave it to him.
That's right.
Recently dead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to answer my own question and derail this.
Nah, you're okay. Wolfgang von Strucker had it after S.H.I.E.L.D., broke off into Hydra stuff. Had it until 2015. Then the Avengers had it in 2015. Ultron had it for a short amount of time, and then it finally went back to Vision, or went to Vision. Here's the description as Wikipedia has described it. The Scepter was a weapon that utilized the yellow Mind Stone housed inside a blue computer module, which also masked the stone's presence. Stark originally saw the stone as a power source, whereas once Jarvis had the opportunity to study the stone, he stated it was more akin to a very powerful computer. The stone within it had already been in the possession of Thanos when he gave it to Loki to aid him in his invasion of Earth. It grants to the user powerful mental abilities, like the power to subjugate the minds of others, bending them to the will of the user, as well as project the user's consciousness to a higher plane of existence. The stone was also said to greatly increase the intelligence of those capable of wielding it, as shown in the cases of Loki and Wolfgang von Strucker. When Loki failed in his campaign, the Scepter fell into the possession of S.H.I.E.L.D., eventually being passed on to Hydra via sleeper agents. The Scepter was then used in various Hydra experiments, notably inducing superhuman powers in the young Sokovian twins Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, and other capabilities such as mind control, astral and energy projection were unearthed, as well as telepathic and telekinetic powers. The protective casing of the Scepter's gem was eventually broken by Ultron, and the containment stone was used to bring life to the Vision. Thor later entrusted the stone to Vision, stating that the Vision was worthy and that safety was hard to come by nowadays. Despite being a part of him, the stone's origin was a mystery for Vision, and he wished to understand it so he could control it.
All right.
Let's move on.
Wow.
That was a long ass description.
That was.
7 people fell asleep while listening to that.
Well, it is interesting, though, to come back to it from from Avengers. You started to read this same section for Avengers, and you were like, that's a reveal. Oh, nope, that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
So it's nice that we
now
finally
that we're
got to
caught
hear
up,
it.
we can actually read through it. Yeah. It's time for everybody's favorite segment, the post-credits. Get out your fucking checkbook moment.
Get out your fucking checkbook!
This was only one scene. It was a mid-credit scene. Idify, you want to describe to me what this mid-credit scene is for Age of Ultron?
Boy, was it ever an end credit.
Oh.
And there he goes.
Great.
Oh.
You see it great, and then you see the Infinity, you see the Tesseract. No, you see the Infinity Gauntlet. Thanos comes to it, grabs it, says, looks like I gotta do things myself. Bam!
Got the quote here. He says, fine, I'll do it myself.
It was subtle. So my big complaint about it is that it happened at the wrong place. I wish it had happened after the credits. That's all.
I'm not quite sure what he means by I'll do it myself.
Well, he's been trying to collect the stones, and now he's going to go do it
It
himself.
doesn't make sense, though, because, like, why would the Chitauri guy be like, here,
Has he
take
been
it.
trying to collect them?
Don't need it. And it's like,
What evidence do we have that he's been trying to collect the stones?
Guardians.
Oh, God, this is the hill Major Tom's going to die on.
So what line did
I don't want to argue with
He was.
No, I'm not going to down a hill. I'm very curious.
fucking
What
with
line happened in
It was
the
Guardians of the
MCU?
Galaxy.
What did he
Yeah,
say?
I think
Ronan's
Idify's
whole
right.
purpose of getting the gauntlet was that's why whole Peter Quill interacted with those guys in the beginning of the movie, because Thanos was going after that gem.
But does that mean he's going after all the stones, or does that mean he just wants the power stones?
I think it's probably implied he wants all of them.
So the idea, the fact that he gave away the
he
mind.
was going for the Tesseract because of the whole Loki's aspect. He lost the Mind Stone because of Loki again. So it only made sense that he was going to go after the rest of them. He lost 2. He's now going to get them back.
So what event happened in Avengers 2 for him to go, fine, I'll do it myself? Where he's like, I thought this was going to happen, and it didn't, so fine, I'll do it myself.
The stone
Maybe he wasn't even talking about that. I don't know. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. They have
I'm not saying it was a shitty scene.
What event?
Okay,
what event triggered that?
No, it's just
Marvel
the
being like,
context
we
is
need to
lost.
show Thanos,
and we need to
show the
what's
Infinity
happening with these
Gauntlet.
stones.
So that's the catalyst.
I feel like this is them.
I think it would have been cooler if he didn't have a voice. If it just like the grate opened and he grabbed the gauntlet and the scene ended.
Yeah, I think
I
so
don't
too.
He didn't have to say, fine, I'll do it myself.
It's fine either way.
Fine, I'll do it myself. I'll go clean the kitchen. I've been telling my fucking wife to get this kitchen clean for 4 days. She's not doing it. I'm putting my cleaning gloves on.
I thought we were
Fine, I'll do it
supposed to
myself.
keep my backstory secret.
Oh, dude, I only said 4 days. It's been like 4 years. If we're going into your backstory.
I'm motherfucking Thanos. Fine, let's be putting on those
Fine,
latex
I'll do it
gloves.
myself.
I'll do it myself. But I'm filled with the exact same amount of rage and
loved
genocidal fucking tendencies in regards to that.
So when I saw it the first time, I thought it's nice to see the actual gauntlet, and you can see a spot for each stone on the gauntlet, and that was cool to me. This one didn't really thrill me particularly. There wasn't anything wrong with it. It just was.
I was insanely hyped after watching this scene.
Yeah,
I was like, "Holy shit, we're getting there." These Infinity Stone movies, we've been building up to this. I go home after watching the movie and I go, Elizabeth, you would not believe what happened at the end of Avengers: Age of Ultron. Thanos,
if your wife doesn't give a shit now,
no, she doesn't. No, she definitely.
She must have supremely not given a shit.
And
then.
I was like, "There's all these stones, and supposedly we've been seeing him on all these other movies, and he's coming, and he's gonna come get all of them." And I'm about to get on the internet and figure out where every one of these stones are and what I should have been looking out for when I was watching these movies.
So maybe
I was so hyped.
Maybe this scene isn't for us, the people who've been watching it.
This scene is not for people
carefully.
who are reviewing this movie.
This scene is for the
hype
people
beasts.
who are who they're wanting to pick up and get them involved. So yeah, it works for me. Okay.
This movie got me so hyped because I know it's because I follow the timeline. I knew that the next Avengers movie was Infinity War. This just said, "All right, Thanos is game."
Fine, I'll clean the bathroom myself.
Fine, I'll clean up your mess in the living room myself. Fine, I'll do your laundry myself. You know what? I need to stop now. Final word?
You're about to like
Fine,
chop off.
I'll do it myself.
You're about to chop off Ulysses Claw's arm with how angry you're getting over here. I defy. Do you know what I see in your future?
No, what is it?
Sodomy.
Possibility.
Oh, I was a little bit off.
Next week we're going to be reviewing Ant-Man. We're kind of taking it down.
Dude,
a notch.
I am fucking stoked for
We're not in outer space.
By the way,
we don't have 38 superheroes in this movie.
you got Paul Rudd,
Smaller
Michael Douglas,
stakes.
and
Evangeline
little bitty shits, and the guy that played in House of Cards,
and a very unforgettable villain.
Would you like me to try and summarize?
Please.
I would love for you to.
Guy gets out of jail. Guy goes back to jail.
Perfect. Nailed it.
The end. All right.
And then there's a train that gets big. And then was that what was it?
Tank.
And then an ant grows really big. And then a little girl rides it. Does that happen?
I hope so. I want to see your movie.
Maybe I don't remember this movie at all. Maybe I haven't. Maybe I haven't
There
even
is a
seen
big
it.
ant that
There
I'm
is,
fond of.
maybe I don't think the little girl
That
rides
I'm
it,
very
but
fond
she
of.
rides it.
Isn't there like the main ant in that movie? Like one that's like
Yeah, his best friend.
His best
He names
friend.
well. He names one of them.
He
I
names
think
one
that
of
one
them.
dies.
Oh, and it's so tragic.
Yeah.
Oh man, we gotta quit doing this. My score is going up.
What do you guys think you're going to score this movie? Starting with DKP.
I think I'm gonna give it like an 8.5. I remember thinking it was a fucking decent ass movie. Very similar to Guardians, it was like, this is fresh and new, despite the fact that it's not exactly perfect. I appreciate the attempt, so 8.5 is what I think I'm going to score it.
H. Tom, what are you going to score this movie as?
An 8.
I defy. What are you going to score this movie as?
A 10.
It's going to be
I
a 10.
swear to Christ, man, here it comes.
I hate this part. 8.
Really?
All
All right.
Yeah,
He's just
I
being
remember I
modest. He's
liked
gonna give it a 10.
Just...
So, so that's
I remember I liked the movie a lot, but I think what really soured me was it wasn't Edgar Wright.
interesting. So I'm going to score this movie an 8.8. I remember really enjoying it, but not thinking it was like, oh my God, the most amazing thing in the world. So,
Which is kind of it's kind of unfortunate because on the high that I was on after watching Winter Soldier, then Guardians of the Galaxy, then Age of Ultron, which to this date are probably my top 3 favorite Marvel movies. Going into Ant-Man, I had like very high expectations of like Marvel finally has it figured out. They finally are on a trajectory where they're getting stuff right. I'm a huge Paul Rudd fan. My expectations were like through
Michael
the
Douglas
roof.
too.
I mean, I'm not a huge Michael Douglas fan. I like Michael
I'm
Douglas.
a huge fan of both.
I don't
fellas.
I don't dislike Michael Douglas.
Ever since I
but
saw
if it's
Falling
like,
Down, I was like, this guy's got.
But if it's like, hey, you just want a chance to go have dinner with either Michael Douglas or Paul Rudd, I'd go hang out with Paul Rudd.
I'd just go have sex with myself.
Oh,
I want to know what this contest is that you're on where you have to choose between them. That's a crazy. I want
sounds like a cool contest, right?
This is a game, like
please
a
tell me
game.
you guys have seen the game.
I did see the game.
I've never seen
I've
the game.
seen the game.
I lost.
Okay, fantastic movie.
Is it as good as Paul Rudd in Clueless?
The game's actually pretty good.
Paul Rudd's not in it.
So wait, you've never seen the game?
No.
So you're telling me when we watched the trailer for that shitty
Wow.
movie you went and saw recently? What was it? The casino
Date
night or date night?
Game night.
Game night. And
Yeah.
I was like, so it's basically like the game, and you went, yeah. You didn't know what I was talking about?
No, I know what you're talking about because I know the plot of it.
Oh, okay.
But
so
I've never seen it.
Okay. I was like,
Yeah, it's like
don't you dare placate me like that again.
I mean, I will always and forever placate you.
Placate to me.
Well, that too. Anything else that anybody wants to mention before we close this bad boy out?
Stoked for Ant-Man, man.
Yep, I think Ant-Man's gonna be fun.
So yeah, we'll be back next week with an episode of Ant-Man. And
With an episode of Ant-Man.
an
Not
episode
Preparation
of Ant-Man.
Avengers. You can fuck off somewhere else for that. Tune in next week.
Yeah, we're changing the name
for an
to-
episode
to-
of Ant-Man.
The show is now called Ant-Man.
It's going to be a radio play. Paul Rudd will be
I would
played by
fucking love to do that shit.
DKP.
No, I'd if I should play Michael Douglas.
Mike. Yeah, if I
Actually, you know
Michael
what?
Douglas.
Yeah.
No, Idafy's got to play that funny Mexican dude.
Oh, I want to be the funny Mexican dude.
No, you get to be. No, actually, you're totally Michael
DKP
Douglas.
is the funniest Mexican dude.
No, DKP.
I'll be that guy.
DKP is definitely the villain. The worthless.
I'll be that guy. I'm just happy to be
completely
here,
worthless,
fellas.
here just to ruin everybody's fun. The villain.
Hey, man. Living the dream, baby.
Yeah. Hating people that want to have babies.
Yep. I don't hate people that want to have babies. I hate people that can't have babies. I think that they're abominations. And I think Joss Whedon was right.
You remember
that they're
earlier when I was
monsters.
talking about like when we create this show, sometimes after the show,
We think.
and we
Do
like,
we really want?
If you can't
do we-
fucking tell that was sarcasm after the bit that we've been through, you need to go listen to something else. Okay? So,
We are
say
at-
your
now-
bit about
we are
Baskin
now-
Robbins and let's get the fuck out of
we
here.
are now actively pushing people away from our show. That's it for this week's Preparation Avengers. Join us next week where we'll be discussing Ant-Man. Don't
I want
forget to
you
like the
say
video.
it just like that too next
Me
week.
too.
Ant-Man.
It needs a
Ant-Man.
visual though, man. But it is. We can
I
go.
think we should make our voices sound very tiny,
The whole thing.
like squeaking.
We've done that by
that'd be
accident a
hilarious.
couple
Just
times.
inhale some helium before we do the show. Don't forget to like the video. It really helps us get
For
the
a
word out
Whippets
there.
Bondanza to sound. Wait, no, that's the opposite.
This is the most interruptions I've ever gotten in the outro in my entire life.
You said ruin everyone's fun, and I was like, you ain't fucking.
You ain't seen
you
nothing
ain't seen
yet.
nothing yet, bitch.
Hold my beer.
Give the channel button, hit that little subscribe button for us. That really helps us out. You can also follow us on Twitter and Twitch and watch our other video game content and see when we go live with other stuff. Our panel one last time. Danny,
Yes, sir.
Paul,
That's me.
Alex,
Hey now.
and I'm Thomas. And don't forget, Baskin Robbins always finds out.